good to see everyone in chambers. We will go ahead and call our September 14 meeting to order. And Madam City Clerk, if you can please take roll.
Mayor Rachel Arizmendi.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Jean Goss.
Here.
Councilmember Edward Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Callie Creeps.
Here.
And Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum. You may conduct city business.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk. Couple of things before we start. Pursuant to the July 16, 2021 Los Angeles County Public Health Officer's orders, everyone must wear a mask, covering their mouth and nose at all times while indoors, and thank you everyone for complying with that. The other quick note is on the back of our speaker cards, we do have a code of conduct, and I just want to make sure I draw everyone's attention to that. And I wanted to read the code of conduct. The purpose of the city council meeting is to conduct city business. Members of the public that behave in a manner that interrupts or obstructs the council's ability to conduct city business may be asked to leave the meeting. And any and all demonstrations which disrupt, interrupt, or obstruct the council's ability to conduct city business are prohibited. No signs, posters, or other large objects shall be brought into city council chambers or other meeting place if doing so would disrupt, disturb, otherwise impede the orderly course of the meeting. And I also wanted to point out that any comments must be made at the podium at the delegated time. So with that, we will move into the next item on the agenda, which is the Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration. Councilmember Parkhurst.
Would you all please rise? Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, my inspiration tonight, I'm pulling two dates together. I think everybody knows that Saturday was the 20th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. And everybody has vivid memories about where you were that day. And the news has been filled with stories about the events of that day for weeks. And many of you participated in remembrances. In fact, I saw many of you at the fire station early Saturday morning for the thoughtful and poignant ceremony put together by our police and fire departments. And I'd particularly like to thank Officer Oronos for organizing and publicizing the event. Because it's the 20th anniversary, I've been spending a little bit too much time watching and listening to documentaries on the events of that day. And one particularly stuck out for me. It's a town with a population of 11,688 residents. And on the morning of September 11th, 38 planes landed at the airport of the town, bringing more than 6,000 travelers from around the world, increasing the population of that city by nearly 60%. Many of you know, if you've seen Come From Away or read the book, that it's Gander, Newfoundland, Canada. And the residents there came together for the next 5 days to house, clothe, and feed all of those travelers. I think we have a lot in common with those people of Gander. Now, while we haven't had a crisis that increased our population so significantly, we do come together as a community during times of crisis, as we've seen over the past year. In fact, September 6, 2020, that's when the Bobcat fire erupted just east of our town. September 15th, tomorrow, the fire was within 500 feet of Mount Wilson Observatory. During that fire, we came together as a community, supporting our local and state firefighters in battling that blaze. Our search and rescue team helped manage traffic. Our police department went door to door to let people know about delays with the fire and to help them evacuate and notify them to evacuate. Our water department was there to provide access to water to fight the fire. Our fire department spent countless hours fighting the fire themselves, spraying flame retardant, Phos-Check that I've now learned about, that I didn't know before, on the hills at the wildland urban interface. And our residents helped each other, with many people housing those whose homes were in danger. So like many cities our size, we're a tight-knit community, and we come together in times of crisis. And tonight I'm reflecting about ways how I, and I hope others, can leverage that cooperation even when there isn't a crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. The next item we have on the agenda is approval of the meeting agenda. Do we have any changes or edits to the agenda? And if not, do we have a motion to approve it?
Move to approve as presented.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is approval for reading resolutions and ordinances. A vote of the City Council to read all ordinances and resolutions by title only and waive the reading in full. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Seeing none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Next item, we have approval of the meeting minutes of July 27. And I know we had at least one change to correct a name on one of the items. Madam City Clerk.
Yes, ma'am. Councilmember Krieb submitted changes to make a correction on the last item, reflecting that the presenter of the project up in Bailey Canyon, the restoration project, was in fact Captain Rich Snyder and not Chief Brent Bartlett.
Great, thank you. Any other changes or edits, modifications to the minutes? Seeing none, do we have approval with the proposed change?
Move to approve with the change.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Mayor and City Council reports. Who would like to report over the month of our August dark time? Shouldn't be a dark time. I guess we just went dark with our meetings, so.
It was a hot time.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, I'll go.
Yep.
So I attended the Chamber of Commerce meeting, and they are in full swing to plan our Winter Wonderland holiday event that typically happens the weekend after Thanksgiving, and that they are expecting that to come back almost in full form, including some form of the sledding, which I know is a favorite, and some of the other activities and booths and presenters, and so that's really exciting, and they're excited to sort of get back into the swing of their events. They're also tentatively planning for next spring's Wisteria Festival, and obviously are making a variety of contingency plans based on what might be available for that festival. I also, just on a personal note, attended one of the performances of the You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown in the park by the Playhouse, and it was just amazing. I think we should suggest to them that they do their summer program in the park always. It was just a great environment, and I feel like there was a lot of community support. I did want to note that they are running right now a campaign to fund their youth programs, and they do have 2 or 3 specific youth programs to introduce the arts to youth and to make it accessible to youth of all levels, and also to introduce the profession of arts to students. So if people are interested in that, they should definitely reach out to the Playhouse and see if they can get involved in that fundraising.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Kriebs.
I'll go real quick.
Mayor Pro Tem.
One thing to report, I too was honored to be able to attend the memorial ceremony for 9/11 Saturday morning, and it was a very poignant and somber occasion, fittingly so, and I've got my hats off to the words expressed from our Chief Armelin and Chief Bartlett. 2 words, folks: never forget. Never forget.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Parkhurst.
So while the council didn't meet in August, there were quite a number of meetings. The Planning Commission met 3 times, discussing code updates, the housing element, and a presentation on the monastery. There were also quite a few meetings of the Clean Power Alliance, our electricity provider. And I wanted to give a little bit of background on that and what's going on there. One of the things that we're dealing with is reduced electricity capacity and increased volatility in energy markets. all utilities, not just in California, but across the West, are feeling this pressure. The good news is that CPA is working quickly to sign local renewable energy contracts. The other thing that I think is really significant about the Clean Power Alliance is that we have a cost of service model. That means that the costs are directly passed on. There are no shareholders, there's no profit. It is the cost of buying that energy. And I think that for a tiny organization that started 3 years ago, it's made tremendous progress. We now have more than 50% of our energy under contract from local renewable sources. We have local control of our power, and we're creating local jobs and providing critical emergency backup power. And there's going to be some emergency backup power right here in this building here in the near future. Now, that doesn't make it easy right now because rates are high, especially with the heat that we've had during the summer. And it comes at a really difficult time, especially with the pandemic. And so I'd like to tell everybody that there are programs out there that if you have problems paying your bill, call the Clean Power Alliance. They've got a number of bill assistance programs that can help you with that. But I think that this is a program that we were one of the first cities to sign up for, one of the early cities to sign up for, and it's really representing our region and our residents well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Councilmember Garcia?
Well, the Community Service Commission was dark while we were dark, so there's no report there. And Councilmember Krebs and Goss covered some of the issues I would have spoke about, so no report today.
Okay, thank you. A few things that I wanted to report on was one is, since Councilmember Krebs brought up Sierra Madre Playhouse, Senator Portantino's office was supposed to be here as well as Senator Portantino. Unfortunately, they had to reschedule, so we hope to invite him in October. But he and AT&T will be presenting Sierra Madre Playhouse with a grant check, hopefully this week, so we're excited to see the support there. I know the other issue that I discussed with Senator Portantino's office was SB 9 and 10. There's been a lot of concern around those two bills. For those of you that are following, both have been passed and they are at the governor's desk. And I wanted to share that the California League of Cities have sent a letter of requesting the governor to veto it, as well as the San Gabriel Valley COG, where Sierra Madre, at least I signed on as mayor. So at this point, it's a waiting game, and I wanted to report out on that piece because I know there have been some of you that have been inquiring about those two bills. Second thing I wanted to report on was the Wisteria Vine, for those of you that are on social media. This weekend was a little wild and crazy, and if you do not know what I'm referring to, there were pictures and questions as to whether the vine was being cut down. I want to reassure all of you that it is being pruned. It's a significant pruning. However, the owner of the home met with the city staff yesterday. I spoke with her yesterday, and there's an article today also in the Pasadena Star News if you're interested in seeing it. But at least in my conversation with her, and again, our conversation with city staff is, her plan is to make sure that the vine is ready for the Wisteria Festival and is planning accordingly. But at the same time, as they're moving in, they're finding there was a lot of debris, a lot of dead rats underneath there, and a really heavy weight that's been on the roof. So they've had to clean that up, and so I just again wanted to reassure all of you it's more of a safety measure, and again pruning back, and we hope to see that vine in full bloom as we plan for the Wisteria Festival. The next item I wanted to share is Kiwana's Pancake Breakfast is on Saturday. I'm so excited to see that back. It's not on Saturday, I'm seeing, hopefully. Oh, I was postponed. Okay, so I was looking forward to that. I had that in my calendar, and I was ready to eat that sausage. There's something about that sausage that's magical. And then also a special thanks to our fire and police department for the 9/11 tribute. I know that it was well attended and such an important way to recognize the events of that day. So thank you for holding that memorial service. And I think,
Madam Mayor?
yes.
Just on that note, I wanted to also give a shout out to our community members who supported that. I know Starbucks and Syndicate donated coffee and food.
Oh, nice.
And now I'm forgetting the florist. Here in West Sierra Madre, also donated the flower bouquet.
Oh,
So
that
I
was-
wanted to make sure that we recognize that our community is very much in support of the fire department and the police department and their memorial for 9/11.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is public comment. And this is an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. So if you have something that you would like to comment on, again, not on the agenda, please either fill out a comment card, which may have already been completed, and or if you want to make your way down to the podium, and if you can please share your name. We also have a 3-minute timer that is here in chambers, and I also believe it'll still be on the monitor behind me. Do you have any cards, Madam City Clerk?
Yes, Mayor, we received 4 cards. I can read them out if that's
Okay.
your preference.
So we have someone at the podium now, so if she can share her name and her card, and then we can go ahead and go through the cards that you received.
Can I do it, or do you need to do it? Stand right there. You're gonna have to show them, and then turn around and show everybody. Madam Mayor, you were out of town according to your Facebook.
Thank you.
And this is for the attorney who I don't believe is in town. And this is for everybody else. You get one too. Whoop. How did I do that? I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
Don't worry about it, we're good.
You can't say I don't make an impression.
Thanks, Nancy.
That's how you do it. How are you? Good. Who's this? It's me. Oh.
Oh, what happened to it?
You might want to glance through the packet before I even begin, because the cover sheet, which is the tree, is the same tree that is on the poster. And my frank question to you before I even start is, in your packet is the list of the 101 trees that they are planning to bulldoze at the Monastery Housing Development. They are all circled, indicated, and tell you exactly what they are. But more importantly, this paper is the mission statement that the city council did. I believe you were on the city council, Jean, at the time. Nancy Walsh was the mayor. This is the mission
I came
statement.
in after her.
Well, this is the mission statement that the city council came up with in terms of how to handle the trees, how to maintain the canopies, and all the things that we thought were protected in our city plans, but apparently are not, because this is not a normal housing development. This is a specific plan, if that makes sense. In any event, let me go ahead and I didn't think I was beginning. Can you start me over?
Let's go ahead and we'll give additional time if need be.
Okay. Quercus acrophea. This is the coastal oak tree, which is technically protected in the city of Sierra Madre, unless it's up at the monastery. This tree and 10 others that look just about like it are going to be bulldozed by Urban West, who is the developer for the monastery. It's not just this tree. This tree by itself should be lit at night, have benches put underneath it, have a green space put around it, and let everybody enjoy it. Because about in the 1920s is about the time this tree was actually planted so that people could enjoy the tree. It hasn't done anything wrong.
Nancy, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to ask you to put your mask. Thank you.
It hasn't done anything wrong. But nonetheless, it and 9 other coastal oaks are slated to be demolished. 64 jacaranda trees, 34 Chinese elms, with some other assorted ones. All of these are being planned to be bulldozed. You might recall we had a terrible windstorm here, and we all lost a lot of trees. Those trees should be put in boxes, saved, either replanted somewhere in the city or replanted up at the monastery because they're planning to put saplings in place of them. I'm upset. I'm a botanical artist. I love trees. I will do anything I can to save the tree. And in specific, this tree. It doesn't deserve the fate Urban West, just because they want to remove everything and start over. It doesn't deserve this fate. I hope you understand I'm passionate about it, but I'm just telling you that's the way I feel about it. You have a list of all the trees they're planning to bulldoze. You also have the mission statement that the city council came up with it apparently about 7 years ago. Please look at it, because it says you shouldn't be doing that to the canopy. You can't replace it. On that note, I will be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beckham. Madam City Clerk, do you have if you could read off the next name of the public comment?
The city received a card from Alicia Lopez.
Okay, should I start? Sure. Good evening, Honorable Mayor Arizmendi and members of the council. My name is Alicia Lopez, and I'm the Director of Tobacco Prevention Programs at Day One, a local nonprofit organization with a 35-year history of providing effective, high-quality, and culturally sensitive public health education, intervention, and policy development in cities throughout the San Gabriel Valley. Day One has been working on tobacco control and prevention efforts in the city since 2006, assisting with data collection efforts and community-led support on such policies as tobacco retail licensing, or TRL, smoke-free outdoor dining, and smoke-free multi-unit housing. Although the TRL and smoke-free outdoor dining policies were adopted by the city, the smoke-free multi-unit housing policy was not. Thus, since I'll go for MUH for short, thus, the MUH housing residents in the city are still not protected from drifting secondhand smoke. We have been collecting data and educating the community once again on the issue over the last 2.5 years. We have also brought together a coalition of residents who believe in having the right to breathe clean air in Sierra Madre. So I'm here tonight on behalf of Day One and the coalition, along with other members who will also speak or have submitted written comments. Day One and the coalition's primary concern is drifting secondhand smoke in MUH, which includes apartment buildings, condominiums, duplexes, and more. We are pleased that the city has taken steps to protect residents and visitors alike from harmful secondhand smoke by adopting smoke-free skate parks and smoke-free outdoor dining policies. We have seen an improvement in the quality of life for residents in the various cities that have adopted such tobacco control policies, including a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy. Cities that have adopted this smoke-free multi-unit housing in the San Gabriel Valley include Pasadena, South Pasadena, San Gabriel, El Monte, Temple City, and most recently, the city of Alhambra, and many more throughout Los Angeles County. I would like to take this opportunity to share a few highlights from a public opinion survey our organization conducted in Sierra Madre prior to the start of the pandemic. We surveyed 475 Sierra Madre residents to gauge public support for smoke-free multi-unit housing. And of the folks who identified themselves as living in smoke-free multi-unit housing, we found that 30%, about a third, reported having secondhand smoke drift into their unit within the last year. 95% of those same folks said they would choose to live in a completely non-smoking building if given the option. This includes people who smoke as well. When looking at the entire sample size, 99% of all residents surveyed disclosed that they would support a law that would ban smoking in at least one of the following areas: indoor common areas, such as hallways and laundry rooms, overall 99%, indoor private spaces, such as living rooms and bedrooms, 96%, outdoor private areas, such as balconies and patios, 75%, and finally, outdoor common areas, such as courtyards and swimming pools, 90%. When looking at the report as a whole, we found that there is strong public support observed among residents for a smoke-free multi-unit housing policy. I have more, but it looks like I'm out of time.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you.
Lopez. Sounds like we may have others that will be speaking on the same topic. So for the next comment card, Madam City Clerk.
The next speaker is Colette Monell.
Okay, I'm ready. So, good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members, and City staff. My name is Colette Monell, and I am a condo owner in the city of Sierra Madre. I am here to discuss secondhand smoking in multifamily housing. After a few years of house hunting, I was thrilled to find a condo in this city. Unfortunately, I was provided with incorrect information about the HOA smoking policy. And after I moved in, I was negatively impacted by secondhand smoke from an adjoining neighbor's daily and hourly smoking habits. Several other neighbors at my complex were interested in changing the HOA smoking policy to ban smoking indoors and outdoors. However, the HOA board members were unwilling to change the policy at this time due to the lack of understanding of health risk. There's no safe level of smoking. Secondhand smoking doesn't have boundaries. It can drift into doorways, windows, cracks, halls, ventilation systems, and plumbing. Therefore, I'm asking council to implement a comprehensive no smoking ordinance at multifamily housing in the city of Sierra Madre. Similar laws have been successfully implemented at 18 cities throughout LA County, including Pasadena. As a professional environmental scientist with more than a decade-year of work assessing and cleaning up contaminated land throughout Los Angeles County, I understand environmental health hazards that the public is exposed to on a daily basis. And secondhand smoke is an easy health hazard that can be mitigated through policy change. So thank you again for taking the time today to hear our comments about secondhand smoke, and I'm asking council to take action to protect all residents from secondhand smoking, and looking forward to working with you hopefully soon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The
Madam
next-
City Clerk?
The next speaker is John Doyle.
Good evening, Mayor Arizmendi and members of the City Council. My name is John Doyle. I live in Sierra Madre, and I'm here to talk about secondhand smoke in our community. I have been a homeowner here since 2009, and I am a landlord. I have been a volunteer member of Sierra Madre Community Emergency Response Team for the past 4 years, and recently participated with them in an outreach effort to arrange in-home vaccinations for homebound elders. I have asthma, having grown up and participated in cross-country, track, and football in LA County during the most unhealthy air quality years. Because of this, drifting smoke poses a particular health risk for me. I believe that the people of Sierra Madre have the right to breathe smoke-free air in their homes and backyards, including members of our community who live in multi-unit housing. Every day I am in my home, smoke drifts inside the common areas from the apartment complex next door into my living room and upstairs into my bedroom. Every day I smell it and I breathe it. I don't think smokers should ever have the right to put nicotine, cannabinol, and other harmful substances into my lungs and bloodstream. But the truth is, that is exactly what is happening. The cigarette and marijuana smoke is inescapable even on summer evenings, when I especially would like to keep my windows open and enjoy the cooler air and give the air conditioner a rest. On most occasions, when my wife and I take a chance and try to eat dinner in our small backyard, we are chased inside by smokers. That's not right. So I ask that the City Council instruct the City Attorney to propose a draft ordinance that prevents smoking of tobacco or marijuana in common areas of multi-unit housing in our city. Many multi-unit dwellers also experience smoke drifting in from neighboring units. Some cities require currently non-smoking units to remain so permanently, and when smokers move out, their unit automatically becomes a non-smoking unit. This law saves landlords over $3,000 in costs per unit turnover for, at best, partial cleanup of third-hand smoke residue. It also mitigates a serious health problem, a public health problem, and improves the quality of life in those communities. There are many neighboring cities, including Pasadena, Temple City, Alhambra, and 15 other cities in LA County who have enacted ordinances to mitigate and eventually eliminate the harm caused by drifting smoke in multi-unit housing.
Thank you very much. Your time is up.
Thank you.
Madam City Clerk?
Madam Mayor, the next speaker is Mary Doyle.
Good evening, esteemed City Council members. My name is Dr. Mary Doyle, and I have lived on Sierra Madre Boulevard for the past 8 years. I'm here tonight to request the City Council consider regulations to prevent exposure of the city's residents and our pets to drifting smoke from cigarette and cannabis products. As a physician employed by the LA County Department of Public Health, I'm deeply concerned about the illnesses that result either from the use of such products by a smoker or from exposure to the second and third-hand toxins emitted when such products are smoked. Since there is no acceptable level of exposure for either humans or animals, it is incumbent upon responsible city leaders such as yourselves to take measures to protect all its citizens, especially its most vulnerable ones: babies, youth, the elderly, and those with underlying health conditions. As a pediatrician, I have personally treated infants and children with respiratory distress triggered by inadvertent or continued smoke exposure. Watching anyone, particularly a baby or child, struggling to breathe and seeing the terror in their eyes or that of their parents is something no one wants to witness. However, this exposure is 100% preventable through responsible public policy and regulations. Sierra Madre is a beautiful community that provides itself for promoting diversity and inclusivity among its residents. We do that by making multiple housing options available. These include group homes, multi-unit apartments, assisted living communities, and townhouses. However, those who do not smoke have no way to protect themselves from the secondhand smoke generated by fellow residents who choose to smoke. All who live in a particular setting have the right to enjoy a healthy living space, both inside and out. The personal choice to engage in unhealthy and risky behaviors should not be forced on those not making such choices. Though Sierra Madre does respect the right to individual expression, a boundary is crossed when such expression harms a fellow resident. I'm asking that our leadership take action now to limit smoking in multi-unit housing, shared spaces, and areas abutting nearby properties. As an intelligent community that already knows the harmful effects of second and third-hand smoke, it is time to craft regulations that will protect the well-being of smokers and non-smokers, preserve the beauty and clean air of our community, model good behavior for our youth, give landlords the tools to protect its tenants, and lower overall building costs. Thank you for your attention and consideration of this important request.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, any other comment cards from items not on the agenda?
There were no additional comment cards received. There were 3 emails that were received.
Okay, are the 3 emails from same speakers, or do we have are they from other individuals?
The emails were received from different speakers, but they are all on the same topic, asking City Council to consider a ban on multi-housing, smoking or drifting smoke around multi-housing units. The emails are received from Natalie DeVries, from Jeffrey Monahan, and from Mary Monahan.
Thank you very much. Okay, and I believe Council also received those emails to take note on that. Thank you. Okay, are there any other comments for items not on the agenda from the audience? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. And that is our action items. We have our consent calendar, Madam City Clerk.
Mayor and City Council, before you this evening are 4 agenda items for your consideration on the consent calendar. Consent calendar A is a consideration of Resolution 2154 approving certain demands, and it is recommended that the City Council hereby ratify the payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $1,134,782.07, Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $5,194.30, and payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $424,187.27 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 and June 30th, 2022. Agenda item B is consideration of Resolution 21-52, approving certain demands. It is recommended that the City Council ratify payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $1,999,297.56. Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $5,601.61, and payroll transfer in the amount of $394,003.43 for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2021 and 2022. Consent item C is consideration of Resolution 21-54. It is the approval of certain demands, approving payment of city warrants in the aggregate amount of $382,179.21. Sierra Madre Library warrants in the aggregate amount of $3,416.55, and payroll transfer in the aggregate amount of $3,173.92 for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. Lastly, consent item D is consideration of Resolution 21-53, adopting the September 7th, 2021 update report for the City of Sierra Madre Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 Compliance Program for Transportation Services, and it is recommended that the City Council approve Resolution 21-53, which readopts and approves the second update report for the City of Sierra Madre Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 Compliance Program for Transportation Services. That concludes my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Madam City Clerk Aguilar. Do we have any questions on any of the items, A, B, C, or D, from council? Seeing none, we will open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to comment on any item on the consent calendar, please make your way to the podium. Seeing none, I'll bring this back for consideration by the council. Do we have any other comments, discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia?
Just a couple comments. I'm kind of new to this, and I see city warrants coming in nearing $2 million. I want to go line by line and see what's going on. And I just want the public to be assured that all council members will do this. And some things that we have purchased in the last 3 cycles, because we're now approving 3 cycles, would be things such as finishing the Kirsten Court project, finishing water main repair, our annual insurance premiums. So those are hefty as well. Our annual water purchase from the San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, and last but not least, a beautiful brand new ambulance for the Sierra Madre Fire Department. So these were all necessary expenditures, and they're there in order to benefit the community.
Thank you, economist and councilmember Garcia.
Let me add to that, because I think that was an excellent, I think the one other thing that I'll note is that, we also had a payment to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Forest Service, for just over $18,000. That was down from the estimated $100,000, and staff is already in the process of seeking reimbursement from FEMA. So we were very fortunate to have had all of their support during the fire, and the cost on that is incredibly modest.
Thank you both for articulating those line items on the 3 demands. So with that, if we have no other discussion on it, do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Goss. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Garcia. Do we have further discussion on consent calendar? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Seeing none opposed, the motion carries unanimously. So that moves us into our public hearing, and I believe Director Gonzalez, no, we have Assistant Josh Wolf will be, okay. Associate Planner Wolf will be presenting on the next item, the public hearing to consider City Council Resolution 21-40 regarding the general plan amendment or consideration of the general plan amendment. Planner Wolf.
Good evening, City Council. Tonight I will be presenting a continuation of General Plan Amendment 2101 and Zone Change 2101. This item is continued from the July 13th, 2021 meeting. and no changes have been made since then. On July 27th, staff brought to the discussion for City Council the alternatives that would be presented at tonight's meeting. So, the general plan. The general plan is the city's guiding document for decision making. In the general plan, it was comprehensively updated in 2015. This update also includes the land use map contained within it. And then because the general plan and its land use map are part of the document for decision making, the City Council's zoning map should follow suit. But no comprehensive update to the zoning map was completed since the general plan's 2015 update. So Resolution 2140 essentially makes the updates that should have taken place shortly following the general plan update in 2015. One of the alternatives before City Council tonight is to approve Resolution 21-40. However, as a result of the 2015 general plan update, some properties realized a decrease in residential density. To address the concerns of the community, the other alternative before the council tonight is to direct staff to initiate a general plan amendment in addition to approving Resolution 21-40. And I also want to mention that staff has received several concerns from the community regarding the existing buildings that would become non-conforming as a result of this change. I would like to relieve these concerns by informing the public that all existing buildings and uses, whether currently non-conforming or become non-conforming as a result of this zone change, are protected by the non-conforming ordinance, which would permit both a continued use and maintenance and the reconstruction of any non-conforming building due to involuntary damage or destruction. And finally, just to reiterate, the alternatives before the council tonight are to, 1, approve Resolution 21-40, which approves General Plan Amendment 2101 and Zone Change 2101, eliminating the inconsistencies between the 2015 General Plan Land Use Map and the current zoning map. Second alternative is to approve Resolution 21-40 and direct staff to initiate a General Plan amendment to address the properties that were designated for a lower density land use by the 2015 General Plan update. Staff is recommending the latter of these alternatives. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Planner Wolf. I think we have a few questions here, and I'm going to kick it off with the first question. And understanding we have received many emails and concerns about the non-conforming if something happens to it. Can you explain that in layman's term, expand on that just a bit more as to what happens if something happens in terms of a fire and what that would mean for that building?
So if something were to be destroyed as a result of a fire or earthquake, it can be reconstructed as long as we have sufficient documentation to its existence. A lot of that can come in the form of photos, but we would like to see something that's more substantial in terms of like maybe some kind of building footprint. We would also allow it to be reconstructed to its original density as well and used even in its prior non-conforming state. Non-conforming meaning that, let's say, it has 3 dwelling units on it, although it were zoned for residential 2-family. That's one example of what non-conforming use would be.
So it was zoned for 2-family and it was existing as a 3-family, that you can rebuild it to the 3 even though it's non-conforming to existing zoning.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any other questions for Associate Planner Wolf?
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia?
So I just want to understand procedurally what's happening, what's going on, and what happened historically. So I'm going to throw a hypothetical out there. Let's say the council votes no on changing the zoning map in order to make it consistent with the land use map, which was part of the land use section of the general plan that was amended back in 2015. And if there is a property that under land use goes from, that went from multi-family use to single-family use on land use, and we don't change the zoning map, let's say somebody wants to do something to their property, can they do that now?
So if someone comes forward with an application to that effect, we'd first look at the land use, and we'd say the land use is designated for residential low density or one family dwelling per lot. And then we look at its zoning, and those conflicts would arise. So we'd have to work that out.
Okay. So land use changed in 2015. Zoning, we're trying to figure out, but there's a conflict, so that we really don't have an answer to that question. It would have to be some kind of negotiation between planning, city, probably planning commission, and everybody.
Right,
Okay.
right. And with all these discrepancies and inconsistencies, a lot of that negotiation would take place, causing a lot of inconsistency in development, possibly going against what the general plan intended.
But Councilmember Garcia, I just want to follow up on that, Planner Wolf. My understanding, though, is that it's the land use and the general plan that would be the guiding document, even though it's inconsistent with, let's say, the zoning at this point. Although we're trying to get these to consistency, if at this point the land use map states X, Y, and Z, we would have to follow the land use map. Is that correct?
We would follow the land use map, but because in the hypothetical situation where there's a residential low density land use with a high density zone, we'd have to negotiate what can be developed there.
Okay.
And that would all go for public hearing as well. It would just be a negotiation on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions, Councilmember Garcia, since I jumped in there?
No, that's was a great clarifying question. Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilmember Creeps?
So the recommended alternative to where the recommending approving the amendment to make the maps consistent, but also directing the initiation of an amendment to address these properties. Can you explain a little bit more about what that would entail and how the scope of that amendment would be prepared so that we can understand what the limitations on that would be?
So the full scope of what staff is recommending to address all of the properties that resulted in lower density, we would be looking at everything that is changed by this application of a zone change, from everything that went to some higher level density, such as residential medium or residential high density, to a lower density, such as residential low or residential medium in the case that it was residential high density. I know it's a lot of words, so stop me if I'm not making sense. We're going to look at this all fully comprehensively as what took effect by the 2015 general plan update. So that would be the scope of what we'd be looking at in terms of effectively restoring the prior land use.
And Councilmember Creeps, are we asking specifically about what a general plan amendment would look like?
No,
Okay.
he responded to my question. Thank you.
So
Councilmember
just to
Garcia?
follow up, so since 2015, within any of the areas that we're looking at for, let's say, a zoning map change, have any residents come forward wanting to go from, let's say, they had a single-family resident there and it was multifamily as far as the zoning map is concerned, and they've wanted to then go, R3 or however we want to look at it. Has that happened since 2015?
Yes, we've had some interest in it, where there was, yes, a non-conforming use of more than one family dwelling on a single-family zoned lot, which also happened to have a residential low density. That, for example, would require a general plan amendment to rezone and redesignate the land use of the property.
Did that happen, or was it interest?
It was only of interest as of this point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Parkhurst.
So I have a question for the city attorney. So what's the legal liability we have of having them separate right now? What could happen with that?
And is that something you can answer at this point with a hypothetical, city attorney?
I feel comfortable answering it.
Okay.
Thank you.
So state law requires that the city amend its zoning to comply with the general plan. So if the city doesn't amend its zoning to comply with the general plan, then someone can sue to ensure that the city does that. and then a writ might be issued by the court forcing the city to do so. It's also worth noting that a lot of our permits, be it design review permit or conditional use permit, in order to grant these permits for development, certain findings need to be made. And one of the findings that needs to be made is that the development is consistent with the general plan. Now, if the development is not consistent with the general plan, and that finding cannot be made, then the permit cannot be issued. And so for any development in the city that requires a design review permit or a conditional use permit, currently they can't be granted a CUP or a design review permit.
Because it does not adhere to the general plan.
Correct. That finding cannot be made.
But right now, the properties are at the higher zoning level, right? And it's the lower zoning is what it's the lower, trying to get the language right. So the zoning plan has the more restrictive zoning requirements. It's the other way around. So it's more restrictive in the general plan. Okay. And then if we go forward with the proposal tonight, being that we adopt the general plan or align the general plan with the zoning map and direct staff to look at restoring the density of homes, what happens in kind of the gray zone between, because to bring something back, it would be sometime in 2022, I understand. So now we've got a gray zone between tonight and when we vote on it to rezone those to the way that, to the higher density. What happens in that gray zone? Is it back to the exception by exception or permit by permit?
So if some applicant, some interested party came forward to the city to request a development on one of these gray zone kind of lots, we would inform them that we are intending to change the zone to a higher level density, potentially allowing them to do a higher level development. In most cases, I see that as a positive. It permits more rights to those property owners. We would inform them of that case in which they may be interested in holding off an application until that's been processed.
And if they wanted to proceed, could you do it through an exception basis?
We could do it on an individual basis. However, I think it would take the same amount of time. It would require a general plan amendment, of which we are limited to 4 per year.
Okay, okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Associate Planner Wolf?
This may be for a city attorney or I'm not sure who it's for, but so let's say we look at the second recommendation to then look at the general plan to do general plan update to go back to upzoning these areas. My question is, like, why do we have to, in the interim, if that's the council's direction, change the zoning map for, let's say, a year or whatever, to then conform with land use and then potentially go back to where it was?
So I think it's important to amend it now for 2 reasons. First, and this wasn't discussed earlier, the resident also bears some liability here. So let's say in the hypothetical that a resident applies to develop their property and their property isn't consistent now. And let's say a permit is granted. A neighbor can challenge that permit. And when a resident submits a development application, they agree to indemnify the city for any legal fees that the city incurs in a decision in which the city approves a permit. So the resident would then be liable to basically pay the city attorney to defend the city's decision in granting them a development permit. So we don't want that to be the case. So that's one argument in favor of doing that now, so we don't have that issue come up. I think the second argument is that there's no guarantee that the future council will adopt that ordinance if it comes before the council.
It's very helpful. Thank you.
How quickly could you get this update done?
I'm sorry, but do you
So
mean?
it's a general plan amendment. How quickly could you get a general plan amendment completed? It says 2022. Is that January or is that October?
We can begin the process as soon as you provide direction, but we wouldn't be able to bring it towards council until 2022.
Because of the number of
Correct, yes.
changes.
Because of the limitation on the number of general plan amendments per calendar year.
So we could theoretically bring this before council in the first meeting in January.
Theoretically, if all research is complete at that time, yes, we could.
Is that realistic to complete that research by the January meeting?
I'm not 100% sure on that. I haven't started any studies at this time, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the full scope and how long that process would take.
Councilwoman Parkhurst, I will note that this would have to go before the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission is currently considering the housing element, and the monastery hearings will be coming up in December, January. So it's going to be a pretty full Planning Commission calendar. So it might be difficult for staff to put something together by January.
And as a follow-up to that, are we at our 4th amendment for this calendar year?
Approving tonight's resolution would be the first amendment of this
First.
calendar year.
Okay, it's just that the timing-wise, we probably couldn't get a second one in before December. Got it, okay. Any other questions before we open it up for public comment? Okay, seeing none. I'm sure you'll have to stand in the wings there, Associate Planner Wolf. But we want to make sure we open this up for public comment. We have received numerous public comments via email. I think we received 11 of them. But I want to give the opportunity for those that are here physically that want to provide comment. And then we can read off names of those that submitted, and possibly, depending on who's here versus who's submitted emails, we'll figure out how to report that out to council. So we'll open this up for public comment. And if you have public comment, we have 2 cards, it looks like. So, Madam City Clerk, if you can read the name of the first card.
Thank you, Mayor. The first speaker is Joyce Kenyon.
Good evening, City Council members. I'm listening to all of this and I'm trying to understand a lot of it, but to me it is confusing because I'm just a regular person. When I found out about this rezoning, I am one of the people that have a large piece of property that is zoned R3 in a small house. Okay. So when I got the courtesy note telling me that my property was going to be rezoned, I was very surprised. And I will admit, I didn't know about, I'm not really good about following some of the city, rules or the general plan or whatever. I know that the state wants more density, okay? I know that they passed 2 S9 and S10, SB9, SB10, and that basically those are on the governor's desk. I just want to know, hypothetically, how does that affect me in the sense that, okay, so evidently I'm going to be rezoned. It sounds like I'm going to be rezoned. I'm hoping I'm not going to be. So that will definitely affect my property value. Let's say my children in 2 or 3 years, I mean, I've had the property since the early 70s. Let's say in a few years my children inherit, okay, and they go to sell it. That means that there would only be 2 structures that could be put on the property. So I just want to know, does it affect your property value? And how is it going to affect me right now? Are there going to be taxes that go up? I would just basically like that explained. It just seems like how much density? I mean, my goodness sakes. I mean, this is property on Mountain Trail. There's apartments there already. A lot down the street several years ago sold, and now they have, I think, 3 houses on it. It was an empty lot. So I'm just really concerned about those things. How is it going to affect me personally? Okay, bought it because it was R3. okay? My husband and I at the time thought it would be a good investment. So, that's just basically what I wanna know, and maybe just have you reconsider and think about things like that. And I know that you're under an obligation to the state, so anyways, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kenyon. And we don't answer the questions here, but I'm wondering if we can connect you afterwards. If we can share your information with Madam City Clerk, and we'll connect you with someone that maybe can talk you through that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, next card, please.
The next speaker card is from Carol Donnelly.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. I'm speaking with regard to taking away the R3 zoning. I am Carol Donahue, a resident of Sierra Madre and the owner of the duplex at 96 Victoria Lane. I am concerned as it is being, as the loss of the R3 zone in the event of a catastrophic loss. The loss of R3 would affect my duplex, so I am in opposition to rezoning for R3 to what would be a questionable status, I understand. I would ask consideration of the residents, as of the residents of Sierra Madre who support the community in many ways, pay our bills, take exceptional care, etc., to keep things at a standard of excellence. So at this time, I would ask you to consider my request, and thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Ms. Donnelly. And I would just double check to see if you're
Yes.
okay.
96 Victoria Lane,
Thank
R3
you.
to R2.
Thank you. Do we have any more cards, Madam City Clerk?
One more speaker card for Leslie McCall.
Good evening. I live on East Laurel, and the entire street when I bought my lot was R3. And East Laurel is completely built out, with the exception of about 3 or 4 single-family residences. Mine was that. But my issue with the rezoning is it seems way too far-reaching. A street like East Laurel is almost all R3. So it seems very, very usury and not fair to draw back that when I bought my property with that as in mind, as part of my future plans, my future financial plans, and I can't move now. I can't change that really because I can't afford it. Also, since you've been out of compliance for 5 years, I also can't hire a lawyer to mitigate that issue that you're out of compliance. So I highly recommend that you not be so far-reaching and consider some of these streets that are already heavily R3, and it's not just East Laurel, it's East Highland, it's East Grandview. It's, you know, you guys know the map as well as I do, hopefully better than I do, but I'm very well aware of where all those properties are because that's what affected my purchase. So I've seen all kinds of people develop properties and get all kinds of, you know, what seems like out of compliance things, and then not to be able to do what I need to do when I get my opportunity doesn't seem fair. My lot is just under the amount for the R2, R3 reduction. It's 9,800 square feet, my lot, and the cutoff is something above 10,000. So I'm right at the cusp, but I also don't want to pay any more, you know, extra fees to try to overcome that, because the fees in town to build now are just, you know, completely unreal. So I'm in the middle of developing a project right now, and I'm looking at somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 in building fees, historic survey fees, all kinds of other fees. And I'm just one person trying to improve my property. So please consider that when you decide to approve or not approve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McCall. Madam City Clerk, we have a few more cards.
Yes, we received 3 additional cards. The next speaker is Eric Lynn.
again, City Council and Mayor. I'm likely one of the many applicants that have been talking with the planners in regards to kind of where I am with the situation on my property, where I just purchased it at this point less than 6 months ago, with the plan to build a few houses on this lot that currently only has a single family house. And I'm now in that strange gray area where I would like to kind of figure out what I can do with it, or is it just going to be a loss for me down the line where I overpaid for this lot. I thought I paid for an R3 and I ended up paying for an R1, so I'm going to take a loss of my wife's salary for a couple years to make up for that. Or am I going to be in this strange spot for if it's January, or if it's the end of next year, or if it never happens, like what's the waiting game on trying to figure out how I can make this work, or what sort of plans I go ahead with, whether it's go back to just trying to sell it and recuperate, or continue the plans that I've worked with my architect to build 4 houses on this lot and kind of be able to move in there and kind of grow my family in Sierra Madre at this property, where we had these plans to build one house and supplement our new house with these other houses that we're building at the same time, and being able to kind of make housing more affordable at the same time. So highly recommend you kind of support the recommendation that we look into somehow restoring the zoning on this, and sooner rather than later, because being in this gray area for too long makes the uncertainty even higher, whether or not it even happens, or in the meantime just paying property taxes and just losing money waiting for something to change. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Madam City Clerk?
The next speaker is Jim Watson.
Hello, Mayor and council members. There are 151 properties that are slated under the 21-01 to go from R3 to R2 or 1. So it's a downgrade on all of them. Now, some of these properties are developed as R3, so they're zoned as R3, developed as R3, and they will, if this goes through, they'll be in a gray zone of non-conforming. Once they become non-conforming, it becomes very subjective as to if they could be rebuilt if there's an earthquake or a fire. If something happens to them that they need to be rebuilt, they may not be allowed to be rebuilt. Other properties that are R3, they will just, if they're reduced to R1 or 2, they're just, their value will be reduced in that they will not be able to build like they could have. Also, those properties are potential RENA properties. And this whole thing came about in 2015 when the laws in California were different. The city at that point in this 2015 map, they were not only going no growth, they were going negative growth in thinking that if some of these apartments, something happened to them, if they're devastated, they couldn't be rebuilt. So that's a zero growth, not zero, negative growth. So fast forward to 2021, it actually isn't legal to instate this where it's a negative growth. We're supposed to be positive growth per California law. I will leave you with just a truthful saying that's quite a few thousand years old. Do not remove the ancient landmark which your fathers have set. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. And I just want to reiterate again that the non-conforming, if something due to disaster, can be rebuilt as non-conforming.
Madam Mayor, the next speaker is Kathy Watson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members.
Ms. Watson.
Good to be with you again. I'm sure you have my written comments that I sent in today. Thank you for considering those. Just had a few other things to add and possibly reiterate. We built a second unit a few years ago. Happily have a great tenant. It's worked out really well. But we had decided that we wanted to add a garage to it, which would make it nicer for a prospective tenant. Because of that, we had to go through the conditional use permit process. So I understand how it works. Some of these things are confusing, but I do understand how it works. And I think it addresses one of the things the city attorney addressed in a couple of things, actually, in the fact of when you're saying there are inconsistencies. First of all, I think that neither the state or the city has recognized any inconsistencies for years. So I don't see it as even a remote possibility of someone suing. And then the other thing is that if a neighbor is unhappy with it, people within a radius of your property get a legally mandated notice that the homeowner has to pay for, and it gives them the opportunity to weigh in. So during the design review process, there is a process for people to be heard and for the Planning Commission to take their concerns into consideration as to whether they approve the conditional use permit or not. So I think that really handles the concerns that the city attorney has brought up. And then also I was asking about if you were to try to rezone your property after it was downzoned, and that is a possibility, but the problem is it costs thousands of dollars for the individual who would be liable for those expenses to request that raising of your zoning. So it's not a good deal for those of us who are R3 and do not want to be downzoned. And then the housing needs of the city have changed over the last 6 years, and the state, part of that is because of their mandates, which in some ways seem quite unreasonable. And I think leaving the property zoned R3, and since we're sprinkled all over Sierra Madre, it allows for some slow development, but not a big, huge impact like some of the proposed mega stack and pack, I call them, big, huge box apartments that are possibly being considered for the housing element. And I think it just is more of an organic way of dealing with the things that the state is mandating of the cities. So, and back to that word inconsistencies, I feel like it's being used as a hammer. It hasn't been a problem all these years. The land use map and the zoning map have coexisted without a problem, without concerns by the city or by the state. So I think it's an irrelevant word, and I would really hope that you will base your decisions on property owners' rights of development and also the housing needs of the city of Sierra Madre. And thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Madam City Clerk?
The next speaker is Deborah Voss.
Good evening. I think you all received my email today. My property, it doesn't make any sense for my property to be downzoned. I have pictures of, I don't know if you would like to see the pictures or not,
Sure.
but I can.
You can share them with the Madam City Clerk.
Our lot size is 12,658, and we are 100% surrounded by apartment buildings. There's an apartment building to the north of us, on both sides of us, to the south of us. At the end of our driveway, there's an apartment building. When we bought this lot back in 1989, or bought the house and the lot, we said, we are safe. This lot won't be downzoned because we're surrounded. And we hope to pass this land on to our children someday. And it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. And that's really all I wanted to say. So, and you know where the property is? You have a zoning map there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam City Clerk, do we have any other comment cards?
One final comment card received from D. Elkhorn.
I'm going to do like this so you can hear me. D. Alcorn on Grandview. I think that there's really a series of unfortunate circumstances that people are facing here. They bought property years ago expecting something to happen to it. Now they have a situation where that really has been upended. I think there's a lot of good rationale for why this should be observed or what should happen. Does it make sense in this particular case or in that particular case? I think there's very good reason to very seriously consider each individual thing. But one of the things that bothers me is that years ago I bought a stock. I bought some stock and it went down. I lost money. I don't look to you to make me good because I've made a bad investment. So I think that that's part of the thing you have to consider. There's certain aspects that have a very legitimate aspect to it, but if the issue is because I lost money, I'm sorry, I don't find a lot of sympathy with that because I have lost money myself, not in real estate, but other money, and I don't expect the government to make good for me. So I think that there are a lot of good arguments. People have a very legitimate concern, and it should be considered. But it's an underlying thing. Because I lost money, I don't think that's a legitimate concern that the government should not make them good. I'd like to come to you to make me good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alcorn. We have one more comment card.
Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Mark Lamb. Lived here for 13 years, and I purchased an R2 property, which had 2 houses on it, which does still have 2 houses on it, one 1916 built, the other one 1950. Across the street are 2 duplexes, and I got an architect, general contractor, was gonna upgrade. Found out it was zoned in R1 now. When I bought it was an R2. So my understanding talking to Joshua is that my best path is if you agree to your option 2, then based upon current land use, I believe that it can be rezoned to an R2, which would then allow me to make the upgrades that I planned for. So I appreciate if you consider that in your consideration, and appreciate your time and your service. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Bill Sullivan.
Good evening, Bill Sullivan.
Mr. Sullivan.
How are you, everyone?
Good.
I oppose this amendment and this change in the zoning map. I wrote a letter to you, and you have the letter in front of you. It's got 4 or 5 different points on the reasons I'm not happy with them. We've heard most of them tonight. But rather than hearing from a property owner, I'd like to speak to you as a resident. Because I feel that this zoning change is going to affect the residents as much as the property owners. With R3 property, it comes with restrictions. And these restrictions require off-street parking, require setbacks. There's all sorts of requirements with R3 that R1 is losing because it's SB 9 and 10. We don't have to provide parking for ADUs. I don't have to provide parking for mini ADUs. So I can have a residential single family, put 2 ADUs, convert my garage into an ADU, and put everybody on the street with their cars. Well, now I'm a resident next door, and my neighbor in R1 decides he wants to do that, and he can do it legally. Well, we just converted our city from R3 to R1, and that's what we're going to end up with. We're going to end up with what Monrovia has now. We don't want that. So I think as a resident, I'd rather see these R3s on these busy streets. They were designed for R3. They should stay R3, and they should be developed as R3 and controlled as R3, not allowed to be R1. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Nancy Beckham.
Hello again, Madam Mayor and City Council. Thank you for
Beckham.
letting me speak a second time tonight. This darling man, Josh, heard from me all summer long when I was walking my dog to the elementary school and I saw a man starting to build what I thought was a garage. It was not. It was a granny flat that took up the entire front yard.
Grandview.
And I never was notified. I was a resident. Apparently, they put something on a fence rather than letting everybody have cards. So one thing that needs to be done is you need to have everybody getting the same attention if something's happening to a neighbor within a certain radius, because that didn't happen, and he heard me loudly and clearly. This darling man also told me there was nothing to be done, because if we tried to stop it, they could sue the city. And I said, what do you mean they can sue the city? He said, well, we don't have control anymore of our own city. Sacramento has changed the rules and regulations, so if people wanted to, if I wanted to, I could put a granny flat in my front yard. I wouldn't do that because it would affect my other property owners around me, so I wouldn't do that. But this person did on Grandview, and I walk by it every time, and I just growl, because it makes me so upset that this was allowed to do. I know it's going to get worse because of SB 9 and SB 10, but it just bothers me tremendously that we have lost total control from Sacramento, and that's the part that I'm going to make the statement. It can't do you any good. I called John Capoto, and we talked through. He agreed totally with me, but there's nothing to be done. So I'm just venting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comment cards? Madam Clerk?
No additional comment cards. The only comments remain are from emails.
Okay, and how many emails did we receive for folks that have not commented tonight?
3 emails remain.
Okay, and if you can read their names, and is it in general opposition to tonight's proposal of approving Amendment 21-01?
Yes.
Or, sorry, Resolution 21-01. 40, sorry.
2 of the emails are in opposition, and one of the emails is requesting clarity. The one email received from Marla Sean Black is opposed to the zone change. Second email received from Dorothy and Steve Lewis is opposed to the zone change. And the third email from Ann McDonald is requesting clarity on the affected areas.
Okay. And for that third email, can we direct that to staff to address, please? Okay, and then council, I believe you received all of those emails, including the other 8. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we will bring this item back for discussion. Who would like to comment on this?
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Parkhurst.
So, quite frankly, this sucks.
Yes.
I want to start by thanking Associate Planner Wolf. He found something. He found an inconsistency in the 2 documents, and so I applaud him for finding that and helping us in identifying it and bringing it to our attention. It's a very difficult situation that we're in. I generally agree with having the higher zoning, being able to put more units, because that seems to be the comments that I have heard tonight. I'm frustrated that we can't do it faster. Things in government don't move fast. And the plan before us tonight, as I understand it, brings us into compliance with law. And I think that's important because we are a nation of laws and we should honor those laws. But it creates a really unfortunate situation for a short period of time. And if there was anything we could do to speed that up, that would make me feel a little bit better about what we've got before us. I think we've got to do the right thing, which often isn't easy. And what pains me the most is the time period it'll take for us to get to the right place.
Thank you, Councilman Parkhurst.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Krebs.
kind of in response to Councilmember Parker's, I feel like we're in a bad situation now with the inconsistencies in this map, and I think it has caused problems. We've heard from staff that there's been, concerns about the inconsistencies, and so I'm actually not sure that making the consistency creates a different bad situation. I feel like we're in a bad situation. It's probably going to continue for some period of time, irrespective of making the maps consistent. And I agree with you that I feel like we need to do what we are obligated by law to do to make them consistent while still exploring the possibility of reverting to the prior higher zoning and land use densities. And so I actually don't think we're taking a step backwards in the sense that we're actually correcting the inconsistencies. We remain, these property owners remain in a unfortunate situation, but they're in a fortunate situation, I think, either way. And I'd rather have consistency and be in compliance with the law while we explore the option that we're going to direct staff to initiate an amendment. But I also want to point out that amendment has to go through the same process that we go through for any amendment, right? We've heard from the affected property owners, which obviously I am very sympathetic to their comments and their concerns and their situation, but we have not heard from other constituencies, other neighbors, and things like that. And I think the process of the general plan amendment exploration will allow for that commentary if there is, and I'd like to hear from the city at large if we have the opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember Krebs.
I'll jump in.
Mayor Pro Tem Goss.
I'm going to say pretty much the same thing I've said in the past. I'm a very strong advocate of property rights. I think that it's the bulwark of our society, and I think I echo what my colleague, Councilmember Parker, says. It's a very unfortunate situation when we are trying to give relief to our property owners, and we find ourselves more or less handcuffed, at least for a period of time that seems to be indeterminate. And I wish I could give you a better horizon on when we would like to see this resolved, but I can assure you that at least coming from me, and I think what I'm hearing from so far everyone here, is that it is our intention to try to make you whole as soon as we possibly can, get you back up to the R3 standard. But I do believe that my colleague, Councilmember Krebs, is correct in as much as getting into legal compliance is also a goal that we have to achieve as policymakers representing a city. So I think we have to take that action and just do our due diligence to get this back as quickly as possible, and to get everyone back up to your various levels of multi-unit zoning.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Goss. Councilmember Garcia?
Yeah, I think a lot of us are of the same mind. I'm very sympathetic to these residents. I think about what happened, and options and option theory comes into my mind, and an option has been taken away, and an option has value. So that concerns me. I know this was a function of what happened back in 2015 when there was a general plan amendment. There was a temperature in the town at that time that might be different than what it is now. I am also of the mind that we after hearing the comments from City Attorney, that we do need to get these maps consistent, actually to protect the residents that potentially want to build something from incurring legal costs to support the city with their decision. So I think those are important things to consider. But we do hear you, residents.
Thank you. We're actually in a better place today than I think we were 3 months ago, because 3 months ago, or whenever we first heard this item, the idea of making a general plan amendment actually really wasn't on the table. And so as we've discovered that this general plan amendment is a possibility, we've asked staff to kind of work through that to see what that means. And the world in 2014, and I'm saying 2014 because the general plan, we worked on that for, 5 years, 6 years, I'm looking around the room. It was a long time. And where we were at that time is very different than where we are from 2021. As we've heard tonight, people talking about where the direction the state's going in, higher density, we're looking for multifamily. And those of you that have had R3, planning to do work on R3, we want you to be able to do that. And we think we've found a way for you to do it. Unfortunately, it just cannot be today, at least in my perspective, because these two maps do need to come to compliance. However, when we keep talking about this general plan amendment, the idea is we're going to expedite that as fast as we can. Identify, I have Kenyon, Watson, Linden, Donnelly, Sullivan, McCall. I know we have other folks that we've received emails from that we want to see how we can address that. And especially, it's great examples, the photos that came in to be able to see a single family home in the middle of multi-unit residences, and how can we keep downzone that to an R1. So I think there's a way to remedy it. Unfortunately, it may not be the answer you want to hear today, but please be assured, at least where I'm coming from and what I'm at least hearing from my colleagues, is that that's the direction we want to go into. One is to see how we can make those whole that are looking for to keep their R3s, but two, how we can be in some kind of alignment with what the state is trying to do, and also the county, and having more housing. And again, I know 2014 we were just like, no McMansions, little homes, and it was a different mindset. So all of that being said is, although we've been inconsistent for 5 years, doesn't mean that we continue that on. I believe we need to address that right away. Those should be assured that if you are non-conforming now, and again, if something happens in a disaster, God forbid, that you can rebuild in a non-conforming with the same footprint. And also, we just need to minimize risk liability. I'm happy, Ms. Watson, that we have not had a legal issue, but that's also something we can't leave the door open for. And I think we have a responsibility as a council and as a city to ensure that that doesn't happen. So given that, I don't want to do this, but I want to be in compliance, but I want to make sure that we also expedite a general plan amendment, see how we can address those specifically that have come forward, those that are looking in areas, again, that have R1s in middle of multi-unit residence. And I know that we will continue to hear from you, and we should, because we want to make sure that we address this as best as we can. And with that, unless there are any other comments from my fellow council members? Okay. With that, I would entertain a motion. And I'll make the motion. I move to approve alternative 2, which is to approve the resolution 21-40, and then also to direct staff to initiate a general plan with as expeditiously as possible. That's my friendly amendment to address the properties that were designated for lower density land use by the 2015 general plan update.
Second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Goss. Do we have further discussion on this item?
So I think in the motion, you said a general plan and you didn't say amendment. I just want to make sure that that's clear.
I think I said amendment, but
Okay.
general plan amendment.
Okay.
To expedite, I said. It was my friendly.
Yes.
I appreciate that, the expedition.
Okay, so
That's nature.
any other further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all in favor, please
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Seeing none opposed, motion carries. You will have your hands full, Associate Planner Wolf and Director Gonzalez. So thank you everyone for your comments and coming in today. All right.
Madam Mayor,
Madam Council Member.
we take a break,
Creeps.
just a 5-minute break?
Yes, so it's 7:03, if we can come back at 7:08, and we'll take a quick break. Thank you. From recess. We still have 2 items, and we're actually going a lot faster than I anticipated.
Oh, is that coming up?
Oh, and look at our crowd is gone. All right.
We've got the Alcorns, then it means we can do business.
I know. We still have 2 very fun items.
Yes, it's very fun.
And Tevin gets to present. Mr. Vong, I believe you're up next on discussion for consideration of allocation of arts in public places, funding for the Christian Court kiosk, digital display, and glass art project. So if you want to make your way to the front.
There's a planning, public hearing number 2 that we before that.
Apologize, public hearing, consideration of ordinance 1446. This is our mandatory water conservation. The really fun stuff. Sorry I missed that.
I don't mind.
And I said hello to you right outside the door.
You said hello. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Ordinance 1446 is a proposed amendment to the Sierra Madre Municipal Code Section 1324. That is the mandatory water conservation section. At the July 27, 2021 council meeting, the City Council adopted the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan. As an urban water supplier pursuant to Section 10617 of the California Water Code, the City of Sierra Madre must update its urban water management plan every 5 years. Chapter 8 of the Urban Water Management Plan is the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. The Water Shortage Contingency Plan is a detailed approach on how the city intends to act or respond in case of an actual water shortage event, drought, earthquake, fire. Up until the recent adoption of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, the city's municipal code, Section 1324, resembled language and practices displayed in previous urban water management plans. An example, currently the municipal code, Section 1324, sets out a 4-phase conservation plan, which requires water customers to reduce their usage by varying percentages depending on the phase declared. In accordance with state law, the city is now required to transition to a 6-phase system. Staff is recommending that council adopt Ordinance 1446, Section 1324 of the Municipal Code to reflect language and standards of the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. I stated that it is very important that the city has congruency between its adopted Water Shortage Action Plan and the Municipal Code that would enforce it. Thank you.
And Mr. Mickey, I didn't have the opportunity to use your full title, Interim Utility Service Director, so thank you for your report. Do we have any questions?
I do. Thank you for your report. I'm looking at the permanent water conservation measures, and I see I've underlined that at the end of the introductory paragraph from the specifying that residents are prohibited from the following uses of water year-round, whether or not a conservation phase has been declared. I'm wondering what's driving that, because I would think that we would want to reduce or at least minimize regulations on our residents if it's not in a drought kind of situation.
So yeah, I understand. So when we say prohibited uses, what we're saying there is that the city doesn't actively go out and give citations for things. It's an educational based thing. So we put it on there and we say, these are common sense values that we have being in Southern California, being in a drought tolerant area. And we'd like you to do. We go out and we personally, I can assess for the water department, will hang notices letting the public know that you're watering on the wrong day or you're using unconstrained water on your water hose. It's not to punish the public, it's to educate the public.
Well, let me follow up with that, because I guess I just have an issue here. First of all, year-round. In the middle of the winter, I don't see why we have to have a 6 o'clock to 6 o'clock watering schedule. It would seem to me that something more like 8 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon would be more appropriate for maybe November through March. I mean, the soil's more moist, the air's more moist, and oftentimes we have rainfall. In fact, I turn my sprinklers off oftentimes in December and January, so I'm wondering if we could consider adopting that. Changing that. I'm also wondering, all customers of the water department shall repair leaks in a timely manner. That seems like we're taking on a kind of a regulatory stance that's unenforceable. I mean, how are we going to get somebody to repair a leak? How would we even know where it is? I know that we can use our data to find leaks, find properties that have leaks, I know that, but how would you go about locating a leak on a person's property and telling them to fix it?
That's a great question, Councilmember Goss. So once again, like I said, it's one of those things that the water department can't regulate and enforce on a daily basis, individual houses. It's more of a guideline to tell people what you should do, a common sense values of how you should conserve. We are in California. Things are trending in different directions with the way the water is right now. So as for the water department, how they do things, we educate, we hang notices. We've started doing a 72-hour continuous water notice. We're doing whatever we can in order to educate. Can we get everybody? No. The answer is no. We do not have staffing for that. But we are, when we do see it, we are trying our very best. In the coming council meeting, actually, the next council meeting, we want to, staff would like to present the council with a non-mandatory conservation plan, ideas, information, maybe even some workshops, so the city can, we can show the city how we can maybe better conserve on a yearly basis, all year long. And one of those things in there we might be talking about, or we will be talking about, is the fact that what the city has done. 72-hour continuous water notices, notices once your bill goes out of high consumption. If we do see somebody that is, like I said, once again, when it comes to watering on a no water Wednesday, or you're watering on a, even an odd day and you're not supposed to be, we will notify. We will educate the public. This is not a citing issue.
On item number F, no lawn, landscape, or turf area shall be watered in a quote-unquote wasteful manner. What does wasteful mean?
Once again,
look, I'm not speaking
no.
just as a councilman, I'm speaking as a property owner. And this is very, very vague, and I would like to know exactly what this means. I mean, what does wasteful manner mean? I mean, what are we talking about?
If I may?
Go ahead.
So a wasteful manner would be watering the sidewalk in the street instead of the lawn, watering to the point of saturation where you have runoff, watering after measurable rain. Those are examples of irrigation that...
Watering to saturation, meaning if I'm watering on my lawn and it saturates and it goes back into my property where it would be absorbed on my property, would that be wasteful?
No, if it's running off into the street, into the gutter, that would be considered wasteful.
Okay. Thank you.
And again, these are just common sense approaches. They're not intended to be punitive in any way, shape, or form. To your question about the 6 to 6, we adopted that ordinance in 2018, and the idea was to give residents 36 hours of irrigation per week, more than enough time to sustain and maintain any type of turf. To your point, yes, in the wintertime we could make adjustments. If we were to go, and the purpose of 6 a.m. really is to give time for water to enter the root zone before the sun comes up and has a chance to evaporate water before it provides that beneficial purpose to the lawn. But when the time changes, we can certainly implement a different management time for outdoor irrigation. We could have a summertime irrigation schedule and a wintertime irrigation schedule based on time change.
Yeah, because I don't see that in the ordinance that we're talking about right now, so I'd like to see some discussion of that. Thank you.
And the 6 to 6, like Councilmember Jose had said, is Ordinance 1403 in 2008. They established the 6 to 6. It was more of a practice, once again, than in enforcement. On the city website. So it's been part of the practice. It just wasn't in the municipal code.
Right.
And to further this, we're not enforcing. We're here to educate. We're working with the community. I think we've always worked with the community well in this factor of educating. I'm a former resident of this town, and my parents still live here. So we're not here to slap the hand. We're here to educate. And once I said, the next council meeting when we can present a conservation plan, you'll see some of the ideas. Might even answer some of the questions that you have based on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Interim Director McGee?
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Parkhurst.
So, aside from going from, what's it, a 4-tier to a 6-tier system, are there other parts that are required by law?
We go based on, so it's California Water Code, so we use the Urban Water Management, the Water Contingency Plan, and we want to match that plan because when the state asks what phase we're going into or what plan we're using, that's what they're asking for. They're not asking for our municipal code. We're just looking for for congruency here. So if we were ever to have to do a phase or have to enact a water contingency plan, that our municipal code matches that. It would look, I think, funny if we had a plan of attack and the enforcement didn't match it in some way.
And so is that the one change to come in compliance or come in conformance with?
Yes.
Is the established level?
Exactly. Phases are on the back end too, just to let you know. There are 4 phases on the top. Don't really change. They do change a little bit. The bottom 2 are the 50 and the plus 50. So those contingencies don't affect right away. But there's some language. We're no longer winter-summer allotment. We're no longer bi-monthly billing. So we wanted to change some of that language too. We want to make sure that it does, like kind of someone said, make sense.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, we will open this item up for public comment. Thank you, Interim Director McGee. Ms. Elkhorn.
I'm Pat Elkhorn, and I live on Grandview. After listening to the discussion, maybe I should save this until next council meeting, but I would urge you to go a little farther with this 1446 and put in a measure that would put a moratorium on any new swimming pools or ponds. Granted, the pools use less water than landscaping. However, one can't escape the fact that due to evaporation and other causes, pools need to be topped off frequently. I was taking care of a neighbor's yard last summer for a month, and every time I went up there, I took the hose, stretched it into their swimming pool, and let it run for the whole time I was up there in order to top off from the evaporation. So I know that pools do use water, probably as much as a landscape would. So I hope you would consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring this back for discussion.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Garcia.
Yeah, so like Mayor Pro Tem Goss, I read the language, ordinance, municipal code, year-round conservation, whether or not there's been conservation declared, and I had issues with that. You know, someone that has 3 children, young children, we got rid of our lawn. We got low-flow toilets. We got low-flow shower heads. We got a dishwasher that takes less water. Washing machine takes less water. And my daughter likes to do sidewalk chalk in our driveway. And people walk on that and they can track that into their car and their house. And I'm thinking to myself, well, what if I'm having guests over and I want to spray down that chalk? Because I can't use a broom. It's not coming up. And I had issues with that because there's a case-by-case issue. And maybe a neighbor has a backyard, nobody sees them, and they're spraying everything down, and they're doing that at their leisure, and I'm getting penalized for these things as a resident. So that really concerned me as a resident, and I would think that other residents would have those same concerns. So I cornered interim city manager Reynoso to ask him about this. I said, "What's the stick here? I see ordinance, and I see municipal code. It sounds like there's going to be fines, and what he informed me of is similar to what interim director McGee informed the council, that these are, it's more of an education process and program rather than a fine or fee based, especially when we're at those lower thresholds. And the chalk example, remind me, interim city manager, and also you had a word that said that would be okay because of.
Well, we're looking for, sorry, Councilmember Garcia, we're looking for beneficial use of water. And so to the point where you have to get rid of that chalk as opposed to, blowing down leaves and putting water in the gutter, where you can use a broom or you can use, a blower. you know, that's something that I don't think would be an issue. But when we see people washing down their sidewalk to get rid of leaves when they can use a broom or a blower, there's just no benefit of, you know, of use of water in that fashion.
All right, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Creeps?
I think I'm going to be a dissenter here. I mean, I would suggest that given the place we live and the current conditions, I'm not sure we're ever not in a, you know, conservation mode. And I know that, you know, that is defined technically under this plan and under the state law, but I would suggest that we should always be in conservation mode, and that there is no such thing as not being in a conservation, you know, situation. That being said, I also like the idea that we're not using this as a revenue source. I don't think we need to be running around, but I also like the fact that it is codified, because I actually walk by a house almost every morning that is consistently watering the street. And I would like, you know, it'd be nice to be able to have someone say to them, look, you need to stop doing that, you need to fix your sprinklers, and by the way, it's in the code. Even if we're not going to provide a fine, it at least provides a little bit of a heft of law behind it, so that people can feel somewhat compelled to actually remedy the situation. Because while there's, you know, the use that you mentioned is minimal, this is something that's happening every day, and it's just running into the street. So I do like the idea of having people be a little bit more conscious of this, because I think we need to sort of come to the realization that, you know, we are not in an environment that can support the amount of water that we use, particularly, you know, in the outdoor spaces.
Madam Mayor, may I?
Yeah,
So, yeah, you're not a dissenter as far as I'm concerned, Councilmember Creebs. I do recognize that we are living in an effective desert. We're in this mega drought. I agree that we all need to take measures as a community to conserve water. I'm just saying that as residents, there are times when we need to do things, and I want to make sure that we have the freedom as residents to do certain activities that might use water.
Thank you.
So can I just jump in here? I'm confused because we're laying down law here. So from 6 to 6, you're not going to be using water, or someone's going to come and tell you you're violating the law. So I don't see this as kind of well, we're just going to tell you. Ultimately, this is a decision that we're empowering the government to use and use their discretion on, that has very significant ramifications. So again, I'm doing everything that you see here. I'm practicing. I've been doing 3-day-a-week watering for years now, and it doesn't adequately water my lawns. They're brown in August. And I'm not interested in increasing those days, but I do feel like we should show a little bit of flexibility here in terms of our residents. We've been through a lot. Went through a major drought where most people went along with for the ride. Some didn't. We've got a person like you described, Councilmember Creed's, not too far from our house, that's been watering the street for a long time. I might add, that person got letter. There was actually, during the height of that last drought, that person got nasty letters from people in the neighborhood. And ultimately, they curbed their use because of peer pressure. It didn't come from the government. So anyway, that's my thought on it. I'm particularly concerned about this winter-summer thing. I'd like to build that into this law, because if you know anything about soil, it is definitely different in December than it is in July. And so you really don't treat it the same. We never have in the city, as far as I can remember.
Councilmember Parkhurst.
So, you know, I like the fact that we are codifying this, because it gives us some direction to give the city on it. I do think we need to build in some level of discretion. I think that this is, to me, is a interim utilities manager McCrae said it was an education. I see it as even a step further, as a continuous improvement. I mean, there is always new technology. Right now, there are new sprinkler heads that are becoming mandatory for lawns. You know, there's a program that interim city manager Reynoso was talking about on washing machines to landscaping. You know, I think that as one of the cities that is impacted by water. Water is one of our largest issues. I want to see us continue to evolve and innovate in this. And so I like the general direction that we're going. I would be curious to see more on the summer winter. I'm mixed on it. I've done a fair amount with soil scientists. During the winter, we're getting the rain, so do we need to change that? You know, my sprinkler already adjusts the time based on the season, so it will water more when it is warmer out and less when it is cooler. So it's already smart in doing that. So I'm not as tied up on the time on it, but I really think that we have this opportunity to empower our utilities department to work with the community to help us continue to be that intergenerational water management entity that we are.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so I would be open to entertaining a motion on this with an amendment on letter E, if that's where this council is coming from, and if so, if that's kind of where you're sitting, Mayor Pro Tem Goss, if you want to entertain.
Well, that's not a beach I want to die on, honestly. I mean, everything that we're looking at here, I've been doing for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you from the experience of living in Sierra Madre for many, 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 many years. There's been an adjustment in terms of all the remember the units of targets we had. Those were always adjusted based on winter and summer, right? Mm-hmm. So this is not this idea I'm sharing with you is actually long established. But if that's not going to carry the day to day, it's not. I'm just wondering if we're really thinking about how people live their lives. People particularly with lawns. I go for walks. Many of you have seen me. I walk this town about 3 miles every single day, and I've done informal polls, and I can see that on places like Ramona, San Gabriel Court, many streets, 70 to 80% of the houses have lawns that you can see in the front. Who knows what's in the back? So I think that this is not a small issue for the bulk of the majority of the R1 landowners in this city. Now I think I take the point that we're in a drought, and I take the point we're in a very semi-arid environment. So I'm not really interested in upending any of this, except that maybe if we can modify it a little bit, just to give our residents a little bit. Yeah, I would like to change that from November to March, from 8 to 4 instead of 6 to 6. I think that would be, that gives our residents a little bit more flexibility. By the way, there's another issue here. A friend of mine down the street, he has a rental, and that rental is conjoined to his house. It's an old house, and when he runs his sprinklers, they're going through his attic, and that shakes the house and shakes the renter, and the renter's constantly complaining. So he has to plant his sprinklers at very strange times during the day so as not to wake his renters as they go to bed at night or wake them up in the morning. And so that really, or his own family. So it really only gives him 2 or 3 hours a day to run his sprinklers. I've met other people who are like that. So I mean, I would err on the side of giving as much latitude to our residents as possible on anything like this, assuming you're not going to get the cheaters. There are cheaters out there who are not going to pay any attention to what we're doing tonight. They're not going to be impacted by it unless you're going to go slap the cuffs on them, which you're saying you're not going to.
Correct.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I may, so this 6 to 6 only applies to sprinklers.
Right.
If somebody wants to water with the hose, it doesn't apply. If there's drip systems, it doesn't apply. It's only for irrigation.
I'm aware of that. But that's how people irrigate their lawns and their landscaping.
Number 2, the issue with your neighbor. We have metering technology that has no moving parts. That sound that he hears could be a sound that the meter produces as water flows through it. In those cases, we do have meters that have no internal moving parts, and in a lot of cases.
Well, this is the actual water going through the pipes in the attic of his house. He can hear it up there. It's banging the pipes.
So what I'd like is for him to contact the water department, and we can verify if we can change the meter to put something in there The displacement meters, as water travels through the meter, it does have a clicking sound inside of it. And that sound will travel through the pipes, and if the house is on a raised foundation or in the attic, that sound will echo through the house. So I'd like him to contact the water department. We can see what type of meter he has, and we may have a solution for that.
Okay. Good to know.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm trying to understand, I'm trying to wrap my head around lawn sprinklers going through an attic. Like, I'm trying to, like,
Okay,
for some reason, I
well,
just can't wrap my head
Mine,
around it.
mine do too. I just don't have the noise problem he has. Water meter, your water meter's out front. The water comes into the front of my house. My pipes go through my attic. My backyard water, so my water, the backyard water supply is hooked up through my attic and through his. And we're not the only ones. Our homes were built in 1965. Half the houses in this city are built like that.
All right, so I'm going to bring us back to ordinance. I am fascinated
But it's a real issue.
by pipes going
It's a
through
real
an attic. Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. So I'll share. My biggest question was about communicating out to the public. I see that on the 28th we're going to have a presentation to City Council. That's good and that's nice, but how are we communicating out to public? My other question was about punitive measures, but I think we've addressed that. So I'd like to see during the presentation what I saw ideas of how to get out to the public, but I really would like a robust presentation on what that looks like. And then with the ordinance, I think I would just ask council as to if someone would like to make a motion with including E, not including E, or modifications to E. What's the appetite of the council at this point?
Look, I'll make the motion. If it carries, fine. If it doesn't, fine. I would like to support this ordinance with the modification of E that wintertime watering times would be November through March from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Summertime watering times would be April through October, 6 to 6.
I'll second that. And actually, before I second that, November through March, or just winter time?
Well, I'm using the months, but I mean,
6 and 6, okay.
Mayor,
Sounds like using the time change, right?
Time change?
Right,
Would it be
right.
appropriate to tie it to daylight savings time and standard time?
Fine. Pretty much, yeah. That's fine.
So Mayor Pro Tem Goss, your motion is to approve ordinance 1446 with modification on letter E to modify times to tie in with daylight savings time from 8 to 4 from, I don't know which ones those are, and then 6 to 6 for the other times.
Good enough.
Yes? Okay, I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Can we bring it back to discussion?
Yes,
Go to
bring
discussion.
it back to discussion, it's fine.
So I'm mixed on that. I completely hear where you're coming from, Mayor Pro Tem, and respect it highly. For some reason, 6 to 6 seems to make it easy year round. It just seems like we already have a somewhat complex requirements, and we're adding another one on top of it. So.
Councilmember Parker Stewart, can I comment? We've already too established the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and the Water Shortage Contingency Plan. Stop me if I'm wrong, Jose. It's already adopted and in there, so we would be not matching what we have going on in that plan. So, that being said,
It would match or would not match?
not match. It's 6 to 6 in the Urban Water Management Plan as well.
Okay, so for point of order, I would just say we do have first and a second. We do have further discussion, and I'll take the vote unless there's other further discussion on this item.
So, just to follow up on that, how difficult would it be to bring that back and amend it to be conforming to this? Because we didn't have this discussion when we had the urban water management plan discussion.
So, I have a question. So the urban water management plan is only when we're under, does that issue only happen when we're under
So
conservation?
We're technically, we're not under any phase right now, but we do have an adopted urban water management plan.
Right.
We have to have one every 5 years. And we just adopted that last council meeting.
But
we are not under the contingency plan. We are under no phase right now. We are not doing anything. Yes.
So what we're looking at here can be under, when we're under no phase, and we could roll back to, if we're under those phases, to be coinciding with our urban management water plan, right?
If that's what the council would like, yes.
Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah, that's acceptable.
So how does that, so would we have, so we'd have to amend this to be able to add that on top of it, so that this works when we're not in the plan, and then when, as written, does Councilmember Garcia's recommendation work, or does it, or we'd have to amend the code again?
So it says whether or not. So if we are not in a conservation phase, then we implement Mayor Pro Tem Goss's recommendation. But if we are in a conservation phase, then this holds.
So we have to change the language to do that.
Yes, I did.
Okay, so how would the ordinance read then?
Should we not take a vote and then?
Well, I mean, we can. So there's a couple ways to do this, right? Is to take it as is with this language, whether or not, or whether it is. But I think there's still questions as to if we change the language in the ordinance, what that would look like. So would it say the way that you're proposing it is?
So I want consistency between the urban water management plan and what we have here on watering times. But to Mayor Pro Tem Goss's point, there should be some flexibility when we're not under mandatory conservation.
Right, so then with respect to this ordinance.
Yeah, so I think the language, and I saw interim city manager Reynoso shaking his head, so it says whether or not we're in a conservation phase. So if we are not in a conservation phase, then we have E echoing what Mayor Pro Tem Goss said. And if we are in a conservation phase, then A through I is unchanged.
Okay, so.
That is what I started out trying to advocate, I guess not too well earlier.
So a couple of things we could do. You could either, we could take a vote on this. We can withdraw and have a substitute motion. So either way.
Well, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, and then so we have a new motion on the table that is?
I'd let Mayor Pro Tem Goss make that motion.
When we're under conservation phase, we would, this is the A through E would be the standard.
A through H. I.
A through I would be the standard, and when we're not, item E would be modified as per the language that we already agreed to.
Okay, do we have a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have first and a second. Gosh, I don't even know procedurally where this would be at. So we are approving the ordinance with that modification. We have a first and a second. We can modify that if we get an approval. Okay, great. So any further discussion on the new motion on the table? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. So nice job.
That's lawmaking is sausage making.
So thank you. Okay, that motion passes. Thank you, Interim Director McGee. Okay, now, Mr. Vong, you are next. The discussion, the consideration of allocation of arts in public places.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So just to reiterate, my presentation today is on the Curzon Court kiosk and the type of work that we've been doing on that. So just to start with, just a little bit of background information. So the kiosk was moved from Curzon Court during construction just because the wood on the kiosk had a lot of termite infestation. So after a little bit of refurbishing, this is what the kiosk looks like right now. This is one part of the kiosk, and this is the inside of it on the other side. The paint has been redone, and the wood has been replaced. In addition to that, the glass has remained intact as well. And in addition to those refurbishments that we've made to the kiosk, we plan on installing a digital display onto one side of the kiosk. So this side of it, where you see that there is an outlet, and on this side right here, the opposite side, a glass piece of art. And I'm sorry, you guys are turning your heads, but there is a presentation that you can look at as well. Excuse me, just one second.
Oh, yeah.
So to just start with, I do want to go over the digital display. So this is a display rated for outdoors. It is the same type of display that you find on at drive-thrus or outside at airports. So it is rated for outdoor use. When people are viewing it, it won't be affected by the glare of the sun, and it's not an issue in any type of weather. And so this part will be mounted either portrait or horizontally onto that kiosk. And then next, the historical art. So this is the picture that we've chosen to use for the glass historical art. This is Kirsten Court in 1965, and to the right, that is the art it's being converted into. So just to clarify a little bit more about the historical art, what it's going to be actually is vinyl that's plotted onto a 36 by 24 panel of glass. So if you look at this right here, the white is the actual vinyl, while the dark spots, that is the transparent part of the glass. So that would be creating the image that we see here. And that's it for the PowerPoint, but I do want to get into a little bit more background information from our work with other commissions as well. So on June 21st, 2021, staff presented the kiosk refurbishment plans to Community Services Commission, and in our in that presentation, the commission approved to recommend the use of the Arts and Public Places Fund to complete these improvements. And we also presented to the Library Board of Trustees on June 30th to receive more input about the type of historical art to use, and we decided on the photo that I just presented to you. So, and it's also worth noting that refurbishing this kiosk is listed within the guiding principles that were set forth for Kirsten Court, and per a staff report that was addressed to the Community Services Commission on July 15, 2019, and in a town hall meeting on Monday, July 8, 2019, feedback received from the community indicated that maximizing the kiosk usage by creating a history of Sierra Madre component in Kirsten Court, and something that includes using high resolution historic photos and descriptions of important town events. So the renovations to this kiosk, in addition to the digital display and the art, accomplishes these tasks for us. And to just go over the cost for the digital display, so and the glass art in total will come out to, one second, I'm sorry, $6,127 to complete these kiosk refurbishments. And so to conclude, staff recommends that City Council approve the Arts and Public Places funding to accomplish the Kirsten Court kiosk improvements. That is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Analyst Wong. Is that $6,100 all from Arts and Public Spaces, that total amount?
Correct.
Thank you. What other questions do we have for Analyst Wong?
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Parkhurst.
So, what would be on the video screen? And how do you change what's on the video screen? Who makes the decisions? Where is it made? I'm just kind of curious how that.
So the digital display will be able to display anything that you just see on a screen. So videos, flyers, graphics, and anything we post on social media, we'll most likely find there. Our intention is to use it for any important events or anything that residents need to know. So like I said, videos, flyers, or any sort of graphics, or even just using it as a placeholder for any historical photo that we want to just sit there as well. That could work as well. So right now, once that digital display is installed, the primary method of changing out the information on it would be you have to physically walk up to the kiosk with a USB drive and pull the information onto the digital display.
And it's not touchscreen, right?
It is not touchscreen. There's a remote control that we get that comes with it, and yeah.
So would it be like the scroll screen on the web page where you
different, you've got pictures and they go by and it just kind of refreshes every so often.
Correct. So it can be a slideshow if we want it to be, or it can just be one single video looped, or it can just be one single picture.
Okay, and then one more question. Where is the kiosk going to go? I'm trying to visualize, because it was over kind of on the southwest corner of Kirsten Court, or kind of in the point there. Where is it going to go?
It's going to be in that same location.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions?
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Creeps?
Can you explain the Arts and Public Places funding and sort of where that comes from and how it's designated, and are these funds that are used for this purpose and not and restricted for other use?
Yeah, so the the Arts and Public Places Fund, otherwise known as the Public Arts Fund, is a restricted fund that has accumulated over time under the Public Arts Ordinance, which is a 1% fee collected through past developments.
Councilmember Garcia?
Just a quick question. So I was part of the deliberations with the community. Well, I was at the community services meeting when this was going on. As far as the art that will be etched, and I know for me and for few of the members of the commission, the red car was important because Kirsten Court doesn't exist without a red car line. That's why it's there. So within that kiosk or the display, is there going to be some kind of historical photo? Because we were talking about the etching having the red car, but the pictures that we had probably wouldn't translate well to the etching, I'm assuming. So are we going to have some type of recognition of the red car on that display, or is it?
Yeah, I can definitely see us running through historical photos, including the red car as well.
Great.
And I just have one last question. In terms of the USB port, is that something that's locked up so folks can't put something crazy in there?
So it doesn't stay in it. You just plug it in, you pull it in, and then you pull the USB out of it.
The port you can pull out?
When you put in the USB, we're not going to leave the USB in there.
No, but what if I came up with my own USB and decided to put a picture of Rachel or as many in the kiosk?
So in order to make changes, you do need a PIN or a password to make those changes. And like I mentioned, it is the same type of displays that we'll find in airports and drive-thrus. So those aren't easily manipulated as well. So this is the case as well.
Okay, thank you. That's reassuring.
Follow-up question. So you mentioned that this is part of the Arts in Public Fund, restricted fund. How much is in that fund?
So as of June 21st, the total amount in that fund is $61,925.
And I'll just comment also because Ms. Alcorn is here. As coming from the Community Services Commission, this is a fund that we have had many discussions as to how to utilize. And it's been difficult to come to consensus given that there's still $60,000 left there. So I'm glad to see $6,000 here. I know there have been other recommendations as to how to utilize those dollars. So that could be a discussion with Community Services Commission also too. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to comment on the kiosk.
I think it's been 10 years.
No comments from the audience, Mr. Alcorn.
Good evening, Council.
Director Semino.
I thought this was an appropriate time, but I wanted to let you know the refurbishing of the kiosk was done by Bob Spears.
Oh, nice.
At his cost, he paid for the paint, for all the labor of everything. So I just wanted to go make sure everybody knew that Bob Spears did all that work.
Thank you for sharing that. We should have like a ribbon cutting with Bob Spears cutting that open. Let's make note of that. Thank you for sharing that, Director Semino. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring this back for discussion. I'm excited to see this move forward. Again, use of public funds, arts and public places. So, and I know we've talked about the kiosk, so I'm looking forward to supporting this. Any other general comments?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. First motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Councilmember Garcia. Further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous vote on the item to pass. Thank you very much. Okay, the last item on our agenda is the discussion for review of District Attorney George Gascon, special directives and impact on the city of Sierra Madre case filings. I believe Trey Armlin, you'll be presenting on this.
All right, good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Last council meeting, you made a request that staff review District Attorney George Gascon's special directives and the impact those are having on the city. So that's what I'll be speaking with you about tonight. As you know, District Attorney Gascon, and you may hear me refer to him out of habit as DA, so please forgive me for that. But District Attorney Gascon was elected by voters November 4th, 2020, and he took office December 7th of 2020. Just for clarity, where the city attorney handles criminal prosecution violation of Sierra Madre municipal codes, the DA handles criminal prosecution of violation of state law and county ordinances. Almost immediately upon taking office, DA Gascon implemented a series of special directives outlining new policies and procedures for the DA's office. I want to give you a brief summary of those. First, Special Directive 20-06, pretrial release policy. And with this directive, he basically prohibited his deputy DAs or the DA's office from requesting cash bail for misdemeanor and nonviolent crimes. Special Directive 20-07, misdemeanor case management. And with this, he identified 13 misdemeanor charges and directed his office to not file on any of those misdemeanor crimes. This is, in fact, the one out of these directives where we're most feeling an impact. And I'll give you more on that a little later on in the presentation, including those 13 misdemeanor charges. Special Directive 20-08, sentencing enhancement. With this, DA Gascon is saying that special enhancements that are added on to criminal violations are a legacy of California's tough on crime era, and he has directed his office to no longer file any of those enhancements. In particular, he's focused on the gang enhancements, and basically he's told them that they can only file enhancements on these following crimes, which are hate crimes, elder and dependent abuse, child abuse, sex trafficking, and financial crimes. No other enhancements will be filed for any other charges. Special Directive 20-09, youth justice. And basically he directed his office to not prosecute minors for misdemeanor offenses and crimes involving property damage. Special Directive 20-10, and that's the habeas corpus litigation unit. And what he said there is that he developed a unit that is going to look into wrongful convictions of past convictions and determine that there was no wrongdoing or possibly that the person has been convicted unjustly. 20-11 is the death penalty policy, and he has stated that, or directed his office to no longer seek any death penalty cases, or no longer try to seek the death penalty. Special Directive 20-12, victim services, and he's directed his office to improve their victim support. That includes directing them to ensure they contact all victims of violent crimes within 24 hours, as well as establishing a victim emergency fund so that financial resources can be offered to victims and family members. Special Directive 20-13, Conviction Integrity Unit. And this is also to ensure that the DA is not obtaining wrongful convictions. They're going to, I'm told they're going to take a look at thousands of previous cases to ensure that there were not wrongful convictions. And lastly, a Special Directive 20-14 resentencing. And they're going to consider resentencing, the resentencings of persons who have already served 15 years in prison. As I mentioned earlier, 20-07 misdemeanor case management is the one out of these directives where we are already feeling an impact. There are others that we could possibly down the road, but these are the ones that are, this is the one where we're really feeling an impact. So there are 13 misdemeanor crimes that he's designated and directed his offices to no longer file charges and reject any cases immediately that are sent to them. Those crimes are trespassing, disturbing the peace, driving without a valid license, driving on a suspended license, criminal threats, drug and paraphernalia possession, minor in possession of alcohol, drinking in public, under the influence of a controlled substance, public intoxication, loitering, loitering to commit prostitution, and resisting arrest. Several of these 13 are issues that my officers address within our community. These are definitely crimes that affect our community, several of them. So what I want to do is give you some statistics on what we've been seeing since this has been enacted. So first I'll give you this year, 2021, January through July. We have presented 112 filings to the district attorney's office during that time frame, just the first 6 months of the year. Only 26 of those cases were charges filed on. $65 of those cases have been rejected. 55 of those cases are per Special Directive 20-07. There are still 21 cases under review in his office, and we are seeing many of those come back as rejections. To date, or excuse me, not to date, but we looked at the cases through August 25th recently, and we see a total of 89 cases through August that have been rejected by DA Gascon's office. In comparison, I'll give you the entire year of 2020. So, and keep in mind this was a COVID year, so the numbers may seem a little skewed from when you look at the totals compared to the 6 months of this year so far. So we had 128 total cases that were presented to the district attorney's office. I'd also like for you to keep in mind that the majority of that year, 2020, DA Jackie Lacey was in office. She left off, her last day in office was December 6th, and DA George Gascon took over December 7th, as I mentioned earlier. 52 of the cases for 2020, of the 128 cases, charges were filed on those cases. 44 cases were rejected. 24, over half of those 44 rejected cases were rejected per Special Directive 20-07. It's also important to note that these rejections are related to 1 month of office within that year for DA Gascon. There are 32 cases still pending for that year, which it's a little surprising just because we're getting deeper into the year, but what we are seeing is that those cases are steadily coming back with rejection. So this number for 2020 is going to continue to grow as well. So far, over half of the total rejected cases, as I mentioned before, came following DA Gascon's assuming office for 2020. And that's, as I said, that's just related to 1 month of time in office. Several of those cases that are still under review are cases that were previously presented by DA Jackie Lacey's office, but they did not get processed. So his office is currently reviewing those, and we are seeing some of those come back as rejections now. So you have several choices or alternatives that you can go with in trying to deal with this or address this matter. The city may choose to take no action, or you may decide to have us reach out and contact and have a representative from the DA's office respond and address council and discuss these issues. Or you may decide to join. There are some cities who have chosen to do a no confidence vote on the DA. In my experience in law enforcement, over 33 years, I've come across similar situations with the DA's office, also with the public defender's office, and with other cities we have reached out and requested that they come and address and speak with council. There was great benefit in that because it gave us the opportunity, the council members, as well as through you, the city, the community members and the department, to ask questions related to this and understand exactly what DA Gascon's intentions are with his new approach. Staff recommends that that's the option that we look at. That is the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief Armelin. What questions do we have for the chief?
I have several, if I could.
Pro Tem Goss?
Thank you for the report. And in totality, much of what we're looking at here is things that we really aren't addressing in the city as our job to maintain public safety in the city. So I'd like to just dig down deep into the 55 20-07 rejections that you mentioned in 2021.
Yes, sir.
Can you give us some examples of the worst cases that were in terms of impact on public safety here in Sierra Madre?
Yes, sir. So, as mentioned before, these are all basically misdemeanor crimes. In my estimate, I think where we're suffering the worst is we've seen several possession of narcotics cases that have been rejected. Those are very concerning because you worry about, the message that those individuals are receiving and whether or not there could, be some belief that they're okay to possess narcotics within our city boundaries.
Following up, can you tell me what kind of narcotics are we talking about?
So we've had, I think I actually put a count for you here, sir. We've had 27 possession cases, and those have been possession of methamphetamines and possession of cocaine.
And they're rejecting prosecution of that?
Yes, sir. In fact, my outstanding detective sergeant is in here, Sergeant Kemp Chamnan, and he has shared with me that the letter that they get back, in fact, simply says refusal to file or rejected per DA Gascon Directive 20-07. Another problem, and this one is probably the most concerning that we've felt from this, was we had a resident who we arrested. I talked to the detective today. I believe it was 11 times over the past year, from August to August. 11 times we arrested this person for drunk in public, as well as 2 additional times where this person had fallen in the street and injured himself due to being drunk, but because of injuries suffered, fire simply transported to the hospital, and we did not make an arrest. None of those cases were filed on, none of the 11. And after, I want to say it was around 7 times or so, and realizing that this was becoming a problem and having a real concern about that citizen possibly walking in front of traffic, Captain Amos went and contacted the district attorney's office and said, the part of the process, the part of the justice system where we're putting folks who sometimes aren't able to help themselves in front of a judge, you're taking that part away from us, and we're not able to get this lady assistance. And unfortunately, all they can tell them is there's nothing we can do. The DA is adamant about us not prosecuting these cases. So, and we actually have, I think we arrested her probably 4 times again after that. So I believe, we haven't seen her, so I believe she may have moved out of the area, but it was a real problem for us there. And that was probably the most alarming. We've also had some where we had prowlers in backyards. I think we've had 2 of those where we had a prowler in the backyard, and because we're unable to prove that they're there to do a burglary, you know, that person still needs to get into custody, so we arrest them for trespassing, and those cases were also not filed.
Okay, thank you. That's very sobering.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What other question? Councilmember Creeps?
So just following up, I mean, I noticed in your report that there are mentions with this special directive 20-07 that there are exceptions, including for repeat offenders, but that seems not to be the case, obviously, in the example that you just gave. So is that not truly an exception, or is it?
So what he did is he put exceptions. He took each of the charges and gave them different exceptions, and I'll just give you a couple of them.
Oh, I see.
I'm sorry, these glasses are going through the fog period here. So regarding the charge that you're speaking about, ma'am, so public intoxication, no identified exceptions in that area. So that's one of the charges where they're not going to go. Now there's, just to give you an example of another, disturbing the peace, which is one of the issues where we could have an effect or a problem here. Repeat offenders over the preceding 24 months involving substantially similar behavior can be charged. Okay. And kind of reads differently for each one of those. Right. But he is using kind of the 24-month period as a set time period for repeat offenders.
So, may I follow that up? So 2 years, meaning he wouldn't prosecute until 2 years, or how would that work?
No, what he's saying is that if they repeat the offense within a 24-month period, that they can file charges. Is that how you interpret it, sir? Yeah. Okay.
So in this example of 14 arrests, that's not repeat offending?
It absolutely is, ma'am, but unfortunately, are you talking about the drunken public citizen?
Yes.
Yeah, it absolutely is, but that's one of the charges where he says we're not even going to, they're not going to address repeat offenders in that case or in that charge.
Any other questions? Councilmember Garcia.
So when I toured the police facility back after I wasn't elected but not yet sworn in, that very day there was an officer or a couple officers that found a man trying to light something on fire our officers questioned that individual, and it seemed as though there was a resisting arrest type of issue, and one of our officers actually got injured that day. So in a situation like that where an officer gets injured during a resisting arrest, does that add kind of an enhancement, or is that person able to bridge or go over the hurdle to 2407, or what happens?
Thank you for bringing that up, sir. That's actually one of the really concerning issues for our men and women. And in fact, we had a resisting arrest recently, and I believe that case as well was rejected. I'll have to confirm that. So what he's done with exceptions for resisting arrest is the previous statement, repeat offenses over the preceding 24 months involving substantially similar behavior can be charged. The actual use of physical force against a police officer, and the charges filed in conjunction with another offense not enumerated above. So he's put those three in there as the exceptions that are needed in order to file those cases. You can understand why this is concerning for the officers. I think it sends one of the worst messages we could ever send to individuals that they could get away with, or I should use another term, they could not face charges for direct assault on a police officer. That person scares me because I have to consider what they would do to one of our citizens if they felt comfortable with this.
Yeah, that's very concerning to me, because we're sitting here as a council and asking you these questions, and I'm sure a bad guy isn't asking those questions. All they hear is resisting arrest is okay. And that's very concerning to me for our officers.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Councilman Parkhurst.
So for the 28 cities that have had a vote of no confidence for the DA, how many of them had a visit from the DA before having the vote of no confidence?
You know, I'm unclear on that, sir, but I do know that he has in fact, or his office has, replied and sent individuals from his office to speak with city councils. I'm not sure, I don't know if you are, sir, whether or not any of them actually had a visit.
I'm only aware of one case where a request was made, and in that case, a representative of the DA came and answered questions from the city council.
And what city was that? Do you know?
I think it was either Norwalk or Laverne.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
You're saying one instance where they came and addressed concerns and then the city went ahead to vote no confidence, or you're saying you're only aware of one instance where they actually sent someone to address concerns?
I'm only aware of one instance where they addressed concerns. I don't know what the vote was after, but if it is Laverne and Norwalk, they're both on this list, so then the city would have voted no confidence.
So I have a follow-up. So you have vast experience. To me, a letter of no confidence, I don't know what that accomplishes. I feel like it might just go in the trash can, or maybe it's considered and kind of shrugged off. Actually inviting somebody from the office here to our chambers, and we can voice concerns and ask questions. In your experiences, does that provide a better way to communicate what we're feeling here as residents within the scope of the DA?
It absolutely does, sir. I think his office needs to hear, and especially from a city like ours, because we're blessed to have one of the safest cities in all of the state, and we're able to keep it that way by ensuring that we pay attention to issues such as some of these crimes. And don't get me wrong, that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to persons who are arrested for these crimes have to face jail time, but they need to be involved in that process so that the ones like the individual I spoke of, we can seek help for them. I don't know. I'd imagine hearing these stories similar to this, but I think it is absolutely better for him to hear the voices of our community through you, myself and anyone else, than it is to get that letter, which he's obviously received 28 and continuing down his process. So yes, sir, I'm in full agreement with you on that.
Thank you.
City Attorney Gregosian?
To clarify a point about the substance abuse issue, usually when someone is either intoxicated or has drugs on them, a misdemeanor is filed. So they're charged with a misdemeanor and they show up in court, and then the public defender or their representing attorney would negotiate with the DA to drop that from a misdemeanor to an infraction, and in exchange they agree to some kind of diversionary program.
Yeah.
But absent that leverage, that person never goes into the diversionary program or is never forced to go into the diversionary program. So when the chief says we need to get them in the process, we need to process them through the system, that's what he means. Without them actually being charged and being forced to plead to a lesser offense, we can never get them into that system. Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that clarification, City Attorney Gregosian. One question I should have looked up before this meeting: how long is the DA's term? 4 years?
Is it? I think it's 4 years.
Yeah, it's 4.
4 years? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions before I open this up for public comment? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have any public comment on this item? Alcorns have no public comment on this item? Okay. Okay, seeing no other comments, we'll bring it back for discussion. I'll jump in to say I'm in favor of this being two-prong. I still would like to see a letter that is addressed to the DA's office as well as an invitation. I do think there is something different about our story than it would be for, a larger city. And really the concentration of the types of arrests that we have here. I mean, these numbers are shocking. And to see the 2020 numbers, to see in that last month in December how many cases were rejected, and seeing how the majority of all the rejections truly are from Special Directive 2007. I don't know what, I want to be optimistic and think that there could be some kind of things that we can work through, that they can hear us, but I think we at least need to take this initial step. So I'd like to see both a letter and invitation to the DA's office.
Madam Mayor, when you're saying letter, are you recommending a letter written from our chief of police? Or are you talking about a letter of no content?
No, a letter of, from the chief of police addressing our concerns as proposed here. And if it's coming from the chief is the most appropriate person to come from, let's do that. I think it'll be important to include some of these statistics also. And then again, an invitation. Thank you for that clarification. No,
So item number alternative 2.
Well, I guess it would be good if I looked at numbers here is what I'm proposing.
Sorry
So,
about
City Council may direct the Chief of Police to draft a letter, yes, and requesting representative. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Goss. It's two.
If that's your motion, I'll second it.
Thank you. Do we have any further discussion on this? Any other comments?
I just wanted to say one thing. I am in agreement with everything that's been said in terms of the concerning effect of this, particularly on the types of crimes that either need sort of the remediation efforts or effect that City Attorney mentioned, as well as repeat offenders that feel emboldened to continue offending because there are no real consequences to their actions. However, the one thing I know has not been brought up is particularly in this current environment. The DA Gascon campaigned on all of this. I mean, this is all very consistent with exactly what he said, specifically as to not prosecuting misdemeanor crimes. And half of our citizenry voted for him. In fact, by a small margin, he won our city, but not by much. But half of our citizenry voted for him, presumably knowing kind of the position that he was going to take. So I'm very uncomfortable with the notion that, I am totally in favor of a dialogue and explaining our concerns, but I'm really uncomfortable with the idea that, a 5-member body, also validly elected, would, take steps to undermine someone who is very very clearly elected by a wide margin, not as wide in our town, but in general a wide margin. And so I just want to put that point out there because I know it hasn't been addressed, and so I just want to make sure that people are aware that I'm not interested at all in undermining the democratic process.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Krebs, because that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah, I think we've got to take, especially tonight with the recall going on, we've got to take elections really seriously, and that the vote of the people means the vote of the people. At the same time, I am very concerned, as the chief said and as our attorney said, is that if they don't go before a judge, we can't get them help. Like, we can't get to the root of the problem. We can't help these people out. It's not my desire to try to prosecute people and lock them up. It's, if you've got a problem, we've got a responsibility as a society to try to help them and help them get past that and become a productive member of our community. And so it really concerns me. I think I appreciate the process that we've got. I appreciate the steps. I'm optimistic like you, Mayor, I'm hoping that there's some logic that they can really give of why this is. To Councilmember Krebs' point, yes, this is what he campaigned on. This is what people voted for. Sometimes I think that we don't know what the actual outcome is, and so I think when you see that, we've said many times before, sometimes we bring things back for discussion. I think it's worth trying to have that. Is this really the outcome we want?
Can I interject now? I'm the one that asked for this to be on the agenda, and I did it for one specific reason. After Chief Arnold's public safety report earlier in the summer, these ideas have been kicking around, and then we had the young man show up here, who was, by the way, featured in the Los Angeles Times front page. The article is entitled "Teens Tried as Adults Get Second Chance," and so they brought his case up as the leading case of 17 similar cases. This is a resident of Sierra Madre whose brother was stabbed to death at a park in Reseda, and one of the killers is going to be free in just a few years because the prosecutor's gone back and changed his take on whether minors should be prosecuted. My concern, and that didn't happen in Sierra Madre, my concern is that we have people in the city who've been contacting us. They've appeared in public comment. They've been sending emails, and some of them are lawyers and attorneys in the city who have inside knowledge about how the district attorney's office operates. And I can't just, for a while there, I just said, thank you for your input, thank you. But after a while, you just, if there's smoke, you kind of have to flesh it out. But I have no intention of advocating for no vote of no confidence, largely because it wouldn't serve any purpose. I don't really believe he would care, and I do take the point that about half the city voted for him and probably still supports him more or less. But I think they need to hear how this is impacting our people, and I think we need to, if this is publicized, I think this will give an opportunity for our residents to come and make input into the district attorney's office directly from Sierra Madre. And honestly, we are different than most of the cities that did vote for no confidence because we were a 50-50 city. I think we might actually be on his radar if he hears the similar kinds of concerns. And so my hope is that a constructive dialogue would lead to maybe some adjustments. Maybe, maybe not. But I thought it was worth it, and I certainly feel like the people who've asked us to take some action deserve at least this much.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for agendizing in your comments. Councilmember Garcia, any comments?
Nope.
Okay, seeing none, we'll go ahead and take the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Oh,
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay, and seeing none opposed, the motion carries unanimously for both a letter from the chief as well as an invitation from the DA's office. So thank you for that. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do we have anyone that would like to agendize future discussions or action items?
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Parkhurst.
Considering all of the comments we had on the tobacco and the smoking inside or in multi-unit, I'd like to get a staff report on that and consideration of options.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Councilmember Krebs?
I'd like to put on the radar, not for immediate, because I know we have a pretty heavy agenda over the next few meetings, but I know, and we've talked about this previously, but given the surplus in our budget, I know we've talked about earmarking some of that surplus to do some improvements around the city, and I'd like to see in particular proposals around improvements in our public parks, both the, like the playground equipment, and I know there's been some chatter recently about the missing slide at Sierra Vista Park, and that's just, I think, illustrative of some of the upgrades that I think the city would really appreciate and enjoy, and I feel like is within our surplus ability. And then I think we've also talked a little bit about providing broader Wi-Fi coverage in the public spaces. So I'd like to see discussion and a report about what the feasibility of that would be as in terms of using some of that surplus funds to fund those projects.
Thank you. And there might be also some opportunity in the ARPA dollars for Wi-Fi. So it'll be interesting to see where, and infrastructure. So.
And if we're talking down the line,
Councilman Garcia.
Talking about our infrastructure, right? So there's an infrastructure bill that may or may not come to fruition within federal government. But if this does come to fruition, I would like to see if there was an opportunity for us to get some of our taxpayer dollars back here in the form of a potential municipal fiber, because that is infrastructure. A lot of people are working at home, and they rely on a good connection in order to do their work from home. So if we can have an option that makes it cheaper for our residents and more reliable, and we can do that with public funds, that would be great.
Great. So we have 3 items. Anyone else?
Just to add on to that, I actually attended, I think the League of Cities put it on, a presentation on the state's efforts around fiber. So it's not just, I think, a matter of the potential infrastructure bill at the federal level, but there's also a big project going on at the state level that I think we can probably try to see how we can tap into.
Okay. All right. With that, we will go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everyone. And it's good to see you all back. We'll see you in 2 weeks.